Prime Minister is warned that spending cuts could take us back to the austerity of 12 years ago.
Good morning. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 30th of October. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're on your TV, on your radio and online, so whatever you're up to today, take us out and about with you. These are your top stories.
Well, ahead of that autumn budget coming in a couple of weeks' time, the Prime Minister and Chancellor have been told that plans to cut spending to fill a £50 billion black hole could take us back to the times of austerity.
What next for Northern Ireland? Another Assembly election looms. A date yet to be decided. We'll bring you all the latest updates.
And it is, well, almost Halloween. Costumes at the ready, spooky snacks prepped, pumpkins all carved. If you need any inspiration, here's one Stephen made earlier.
Bad, is it?
No, it's not bad.
Oh, that's not me.
And that's the professional pumpkin carver we're going to be talking to a bit later on in the programme to show us how to do it properly. Not that yours wasn't. Yours was brilliant.
It's all right, wasn't it?
In the meantime, actually, if you've already been up and about making your pumpkins for tonight, then do send us photographs of your creations. I wonder if you can do better than Steve.
GB Views at gbnews.uk for all of those and anything else you want to talk about this morning.
Now, as you probably would expect with the Sunday papers particularly, the Prime Minister all over them. Sometimes, well, actually not very often being praised for what he's saying at the moment. He's being attacked for nearly everything he's announced so far. And I don't know about you, do you agree with me that nearly everything at the moment they're announcing is so very negative?
It is negative. Things like scrapping the new royal yacht and what have you. However...
Not going to COP27?
Well... Some people would see that as positive, though. And scrapping the royal yacht, I think the royal yacht's a really nice idea. However, £250 million, does it seem like an extravagance?
But it wasn't just going to be for the royals, was it? It was going to be very much a flag waver for Britain, something that Britain could send to, for instance, Sharm el-Sheikh at the moment. You might arrive there, and it just says Britain. And we haven't had a royal yacht for so many years. We haven't had Concorde for so many years. We haven't had something that's a big British flag waver for so many years. And I don't know, I thought it was a great idea. But it was one of Boris's ideas, you see, and maybe that's one of the reasons it's been axed.
Well, perhaps.
And meanwhile, while Rishi Sunak is saying he won't go to COP27 and the King is being discouraged to go and is now not going, although he is hosting a reception here in Britain for climate change sort of experts, Boris is apparently going to go. Do you think he should? GB Views at gbnews.uk.
Well, all of this coming as we talk money. Of course, it's all about the autumn budget, which is now on November the 17th. £50 billion black hole that needs filling, so spending cuts and tax rises are all expected. Let's talk to former political correspondent, now current political commentator, Peter Spencer. Morning to you, Peter. Look, what do you make of this? I mean, as Anne was saying, a lot of what we're getting at the moment from Number 10 is sort of very negative.
Well, no surprise there, to be perfectly honest. I mean, to sort of look at it through a slightly longer lens, in the olden days when stuff went wrong in television centre, they used to put up a little card that said, normal service will be resumed as soon as possible. Well, it just has been. We had an interregnum, let's call it by its proper name, between the downfall of Johnson and the elevation of Sunak. We now once again have a government, and it is facing a daunting range of problems. The money thing in particular, that we're talking, the word is about a £50 billion black hole. Well, Britain, the same as most Western nations, is in serious trouble. Not only was the small matter of Mad Dad's war, which of course has caused energy prices to rocket, there's also the small matter of COVID. Now, the furlough itself, which is Sunak's gift to the nation, cost £70 billion. And then if you tot up all the other bits and bobs, test and trace, and so on, it comes to sort of an eye-watering between 300 and 400 billion pounds. Now, when Truss was in charge briefly, we had the la-la economics. Oh, don't worry, we'll just shake the money tree and make everyone richer, especially the rich, it has to be said. And now we've got the grown-ups looking at the numbers and going, "Oh my God, now what do we do?" Well, the reality is, they talk about there might be a new age of austerity. I don't see how they can avoid that. I'm not at all surprised that Sunak's had a few words with George Osborne, who was the Chancellor who initiated the last age of austerity, thanks to the spibs in Wall Street messing up the world economy. And I suspect that he hasn't been talking so much about how do we do it. It's a question of how do we sell it, because it's going to be a really tricky one.
Yes, I mean, no matter how truthful the news, and it's pretty dire, there has to be a different way of selling it to us, doesn't there? Because at the moment it's just so depressing. We gather that Rishi Sunak has appointed a new head of communications. Do you think that might improve things?
Well, every little helps, as the old slogan goes. But he's going to have to big up the fact that the nation is in huge debt. I mean, he might also make the point that apparently because the money markets have settled down now that Truss and her fantasy economics are out of the window, we've got what they call a dullness dividend of some £10 billion. Again, every little helps, it's only a little bit. I mean, I think he'll have no choice but to really big up the fact that we had the COVID massive bill, and it has to be paid. I mean, also, I suspect that, when we're talking about a 50 billion black hole, what that suggests to me is that he's doing it stage by stage, meaning it's going to take years to sort out. And he's got, because what he's going to face is inevitably, we had the Resolution Foundation today saying, "Oh, this is really going to hurt." Well, that's just a shot across the bows. When that autumn statement, budget, whatever you want to call it, comes out in a couple of weeks or so, there are going to be howls of anguish, because there cannot fail to be cuts in pretty much every service on which so many people rely. Also, I suspect there's going to be a fair few harumphs from elements within the Conservative Party, because unlike Truss, who said, "Oh, there's going to be no new taxes," he's going to sort of bite that bullet as well and whack them up a bit.
Yeah, but as far as the markets are concerned, they do seem to have improved somewhat. The pound seems to have improved somewhat. Interest rates on mortgage interest rates, at least, seem to be going ever so slightly down in the last week. As Michael Gove said, boring is back. Is that what the markets want?
Of course, it's what the markets want. What they want is stability. They're talking about huge amounts of other people's money, and they want to be fairly sure that they haven't backed a complete loser. And so, yeah, I mean, I suspect that already we've seen the market settling down a bit, thinking, look, we've got the grown-ups back in the room, so we can sort of trust them, because what they did not have when Truss was in charge was any kind of confidence in the government's competence. And now we have a government which does look like a bunch of grown-ups. At least, we've got Sunak and Hunt. Sunak was the Chancellor, and for heaven's sake, if he doesn't understand money, no one does. It's not as if he hasn't made an absolute fortune himself. He's twice as rich as the king for a start. When they present this huge shopping list of what they're going to take away from everyday people, which, as I say, will bring out howls of anguish, the markets will probably react by saying, well, what else could they do?
Meanwhile, and finally, in the midst of all of this that we've been talking about, this whole climate that's going on at the moment, should Boris Johnson go to COP27?
Well, Boris Johnson is a law unto himself. I mean, I think from the point of view of the government, that's a singularly, spectacularly horrible idea, because God knows what words will come out of his mouth. But as far as the government's concerned, look, to try to sort of do our bit to reduce climate change is yet another thing to add to the huge tab that the government faces, which I suspect is one reason why they're doing their best to sort of play it down, because they feel like they haven't got a penny to spare. And so the last thing they need is to suddenly find themselves committing to something else which is going to cost a huge amount of money. What Boris will have to say on the subject, God alone knows.
Okay. Peter, thanks very much indeed. Well, at 10 minutes past 6, let's bring you up to date with some of the other headlines this morning. And South Korea's president has declared a period of national mourning after a deadly stampede last night. At least 151 people were killed and 82 injured in the capital, Seoul. Rishi Sunak has tweeted saying, "All our thoughts are with South Koreans at this very distressing time."
Russia has suspended a UN-brokered Black Sea grain deal with Ukraine after an alleged Ukrainian drone attack on its fleet in Crimea. The US President Joe Biden called the move purely outrageous and said it would increase starvation. Meanwhile, the United Nations have resumed contacts with Russian authorities.
Well, the government's been urged to launch an urgent investigation following reports that Liz Truss's phone was hacked while she was Foreign Secretary. The Mail revealed that the phone was hacked by Russian agents. It was supposedly discovered during the summer Tory leadership campaign.
And the Princess of Wales, Catherine, has urged those suffering with an addiction not to let shame hold them back from getting help. She made the comments via video on the first day of what is Addiction Awareness Week. She herself is the patron of the addiction recovery charity, the Forward Trust.
I sort of like that she's becoming a little bit more visible.
Yes, I like it as well.
She has. I mean, she has kept sort of a few steps behind William, hasn't she, up until now?
Yeah.
The royal protocol.
She said some really very helpful things, I think, about addiction in that video. She said it is a health condition. It is not a choice, and don't let shame hold you back from getting the help you need, because you'll need help to kick an addiction. And she says it very as though she really knows her stuff. She's done her homework on it, and she obviously knows all the experts, and it's coming from the heart. And a charity or a movement like that needs somebody that high profile, doesn't it?
Does. Impressive. She is proving to be
really
very
is.
impressive. Now, it might be early days for the Prime Minister, but just 1 week, or nearly a week into his tenure in Downing Street, are we getting a sense of his ambitions?
Yeah, how has he fared during his first week in office? How would you sum it up? Well, GB News Paul Brodel joins us now to give us his take. A very good morning. Hi, lovely to talk to you.
How exciting.
Yeah, isn't it?
Do you know what? It is wonderful, yeah.
So we're not even a week, not a full week into a Rishi Sunak premiership, but give us what you think he's done in this last week. Has he impressed you at all?
Well, you know what? I feel like he's very intelligent. I really hope he's the man for the job, because obviously we all want the country to do well. So I'm kind of backing him. I think it's the right thing to do to cancel the Royal Yacht. £250 million at the moment. What signal does that send out? So I think it's the right thing to do. And when you look how interest rates have started to go down again, after that, what disastrous happened before, I think hopefully he's the right man to do it. Fingers crossed.
What do you think, though, of the messaging, which has been quite... I mean, it is all very negative at the moment, and especially when we look at this £50 billion black hole we've got to fill, and it's going to be a very difficult autumn statement in a couple of weeks. Do we not need some light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, do you know what? I think for the markets at the moment, they want to be filled with confidence. So in some ways, I'm glad he's not going to COP, which I do think is a very important thing. But I want someone at home looking at the books, looking at how we get through this. He got us through COVID, and now I want him to get us through this. He's obviously, he's fabulously wealthy. So I believe, hopefully, he's doing this because he believes in the good of the country and not doing it really for self-gain. So I think the whole country should get behind him, and let's just hope it works. The interest rates have gone down already. The pound's gone up. So hopefully, out of all of them, I think he seems like he's the man for the job. He's obviously very intelligent, and to have got where he's got, I think, well, let's hope it works.
It's interesting you say that because, well, it's 7:15 already, and you're the second person we've spoken to this morning, and both of you have mentioned his wealth. Don't you think maybe that his fabulous wealth does make him... Well, he just can't be in touch, can he? He can't be in touch with ordinary people and their problems.
Well, when you look, what was his mother? A pharmacist, and he worked as a waiter when he was at university. So I think, hopefully he can remember some of that to connect with now and what's going on. So I think you shouldn't just knock people because they're wealthy. Hopefully he will understand. He did get us through COVID. I've got a hotel, and I was so worried about all my staff, and they all went on furlough, and we survived it all. So I think at the moment we are in a we're in a parliamentary where you vote for the party, and I think, well, if he's who they put forward, let's hope it works. And so far, the first week in, the mainstream media, all they want to do is attack politicians all the time. And sometimes I actually want to listen to what they've got to say. And that's why I love GBNews so much, because I feel like you let them hear their voice and you're allowed to comment, so without attacking them and being so aggressive. So I just love it.
I mean, it's an interesting point you raise, actually, because, certainly the papers, are always looking for an angle. They're always looking for a point of attack. And they did the same with Liz Truss. They did the same with Boris Johnson. They always do. Have we finally reached... so many people have said, just let them get on with the job, and they said that about Liz Truss as well. Have we finally reached a point, do you think, where most people are now so fed up with everything that they are just going to say, let's just see where we are in a few months. Let's see where we are by the new year. Leave him alone.
I really hope so. But already, as soon as he entered office, I was thinking, is this going to happen? And then he started attacking them, appointed at everything. And you think, well, I really just want them to succeed, and I want them to concentrate on getting the job done, which is really important.
Can I see a feline making its way into your picture there?
You can.
They always do. Oh, no, it's a dog. Oh, he's lovely. Or she. What sort of breed?
It's a Buster. Yeah. So he's been very good today, aren't you? Yeah.
Oh.
So that's good.
He's got a few comments. And it's Halloween tonight. You say you're in the hotel business. Are you celebrating any particular way?
Well, we had a big party last night and everything. So we had all the fancy dress as well, and we're going around. We had done different shots where they curdle in the middle. One looked like a brain. It was quite scary, really. Yeah, where you put Baileys in the middle of peach schnapps, and it just kind of, yeah, not my thing.
Baileys and peach schnapps.
Well, there you go. You can try that later.
Yeah, I might do.
Paul, really good to see you this morning. Thanks very much
great.
indeed.
Thank you. Yes, indeed. Thank you. It is Halloween tonight, and
tomorrow.
Tomorrow, of course, it's tomorrow, isn't it? So, but everybody's starting to carve their pumpkins.
Yes,
you went to a pumpkin patch yesterday.
We'd never done it before. We went to a pumpkin patch. We just thought, we'll try this.
And you chose you
choose your pumpkin.
What, and pull it out the ground?
Well, no, they've already cut them off.
Oh, right.
But it was. I don't know if I'd do it again, because it was just it was just kids. So by the time you've gone in and picked your pumpkin, and they said, what do you do now?
But then you take it home and you have a go at carving it.
Yeah.
And the kitchen ends up just like in a slurry of pumpkin stuff, doesn't it?
No. Well, I tell you, I'm very lucky. I've got a waste disposal unit.
Well, I've got one of those.
Yeah. So they're honestly they're a good sense. So you just all straight in the sink, and then it all.
So you didn't make soup.
So no. But I did save the seeds.
Oh, good. You're going to dry them in the oven?
Roasted them last night.
Oh, you did?
Very
did you eat them?
Yeah. Well, not all of them. Because there's a lot.
No, you'd have trouble this morning if you'd eaten a lot.
Very nice. Anyway, you've all been carving your pumpkins. Apparently, Kevin in Belfast says, my daughter Loreen created this pumpkin with teeth, and it's terrifying.
It is terrifying. Ooh. That's horrible.
In a good way.
But it's meant to be, isn't it? Yeah. So if you've been carving pumpkins, take a picture and send it to us. We'd love to see if you can do as well as this one here, who did a wonderful pumpkin. I don't know if we've still got the picture. We can just pull it up.
I was quite
An exceptionally impressive pumpkin. How long did it take you to carve?
It took me about 40 minutes, I think.
We'll find the picture.
We'll dig it up for you.
Yeah.
But I did look online for inspiration, and I'm not the artistic type at all. So I just sat there with me. I drew it out with a pen, and then just
Yeah.
Off we
and
went.
It worked.
And
It's
it worked.
really, really good. And of course, you don't have to put live candles in them anymore. In fact, everybody's saying it's really unsafe to do. You can buy the little battery-operated tea lights and put those in. And they even, a lot of them have a flicker setting. Yeah, and it can look really, really good.
Well, to be fair, we've got candles in ours.
Have you? Yeah. Well, you have to do everything just so, don't you?
Just so. Anyway, look, more to come for you in a couple of minutes, including COVID may be back. We'll tell you more in a couple of minutes. Well, looking ahead to the weather in the UK is going to be showery in the west this morning, brighter elsewhere, rain in the far southeast. Here are the details.
By midday, the southwest of England will see a mix of sunshine and scattered showers. The showers locally perhaps heavy and being blown through on a brisk southwesterly wind.
Thicker cloud likely across southeastern parts of England. Here the showers will be merging, so that's going to give some longer spells of rain.
Some heavy and quite blustery showers will affect Wales, although in the brighter spells, temperatures could read a mild 16 Celsius.
Now, most parts of the Midlands should just about escape any showers. There'll be some bright or sunny spells developing at times. Going to be quite mild for late October, although there will be a bit of a breeze.
A generally fine weather will extend to the northeast of England as well, with showers confined to the Pennine areas. In shelter from the wind, it shouldn't feel too bad, thanks to some sunshine.
Let's head to Scotland, where the sun will be more reluctant to break through across southern parts, though quite a few showers are likely, some of which will be on the heavy side.
And a good scattering of showers will affect Northern Ireland as well, although most of these should be light and they should feed through quite quickly in the wind.
So during the afternoon and evening, showers gradually easing, some good cloud breaks developing, though it will be breezy. And that's your weather this Sunday.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
.23 morning to you. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Now, the UK Health and Security Agency have identified 2 new strains of coronavirus in this country.
And more than 700 cases of the mutant BQ1 variant have been detected across the country. 18 cases of what they're calling XBB have been detected as well. However, both strains have not been designated as variants of concern as of yet.
Joining us now for more is Dr. Azim Majid, who's Professor of Primary Care and Public Health at Imperial College. A very good morning to you. Although if we're being told on the one hand these two new strains are not of primary concern, there is a lot of rumour in today's newspapers saying, however, they will be resistant to the vaccines that we now have. What's the truth of this?
Good morning, Anne. So with the virus that causes COVID-19, there are two things to bear in mind. One is that it does mutate constantly, so we will face new variants, throughout the year and in the future as well. The second point to bear in mind is that our vaccines do protect well against serious illness and death. So no matter what variant we face, including BQ1 and XBB, the vaccines still work well against serious illness. So the message is get vaccinated, get your boosters, and that will help us get through this winter.
Are we going to reach a point quite soon where new variants just aren't going to make any headlines? A bit like, obviously we get a new flu variant every single year and nobody even thinks about it. Is that where we're heading, do you think?
It's quite possible. So the virus, as I mentioned, will mutate constantly, but at some point perhaps we'll pay less attention to these variants. We've now got good immunity in the population through vaccination and prior infection. So over time, I think the variants will have less impact on serious illness and death, although people will still get infected, unfortunately.
It was expected that new variants would pop up all over the place, wasn't it? We were always told this.
Yeah, it's a fact of life. These viruses do mutate, and so we'll see these variants arising all over the world constantly. But so most don't amount to very much. It's only occasionally we get a variant like Omicron or Delta that causes a large wave of infection. Most variants aren't of any great concern, which is why this variant has not been marked as of serious concern by WHO.
Well, what are we seeing in terms of uptake of the latest booster jab? I think it's 50 and over, plus those with relevant conditions, isn't it? Are you seeing a fairly good uptake?
It's good in many parts of the UK. It is, though, low in London, so London is lagging behind the rest of the country, which is of concern, because London is a very big city with a risk of major waves of infection. So overall, it's going quite well. It could go better, so do come forward to vaccine if you're eligible. And in London, as I mentioned, it is not going as well as other parts of the UK at the moment.
So your advice to ordinary people who are watching at the moment, who may read these headlines and get a bit fearful, your advice to them would be?
Don't be overly concerned. If you're vaccinated, you'll be well protected against serious illness and death. If you're unwell with an infection like COVID or flu, stay off work and protect others. So behave sensibly, get your vaccines, but don't get over anxious.
Yeah, good advice. Dr. Majid, good to talk to you as always. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Steve.
Got to keep it all in perspective, haven't we? I tell you what drove me mad yesterday. And I shouldn't be. I really try not to be critical of people as a general rule in life, because I don't think it's good for the soul. But when we were on our pumpkin patch, which is a huge area, there was a fella walking about with a mask on outside. No one. Which, if you want to do it, fine, but what's the point? And then when we went inside, there's like a coffee tent. Obviously, everyone's all gathered together, so we took it off.
Oh.
And I just thought, well, what's the point in that?
Oh.
What is the point in that?
Yes, I don't understand. I can understand. I wore a mask on the aircraft going out to Malta. I don't really know why I did. I just thought, I'm on an aircraft, why not?
Yeah.
I'm sitting there.
It's not
why not take that
harm.
extra precaution? You're always aware, aren't you? And I think during the pandemic we became more aware that when you're on an aircraft, you are breathing in everyone else's air, really, aren't you? It just seemed a sensible thing to do, but I don't know why you'd wear it outdoors and then take it off.
Not indoors.
Not indoors, yeah.
No. But isn't it funny how it's affected all of our lives? I mean, when I go back to the car after work here, there's a Pelican Crossing. And anytime anything like that, I always do it with the big knuckle.
Yes, yeah.
Don't actually touch it.
And I use I like the fact that hand sanitizer is still everywhere. Yeah. And I use it when I see it all the time.
I use it when I've been around the supermarket and I've held onto a trolley. As soon as I get back in, I've got some in the car so that
Yes.
Now, is that paranoid?
No, it's not. Actually, I think that's basic good health, isn't it?
But I've not yet had COVID. So...
Touch wood. No, me either.
So,
but,
there you go.
That's not to make a... You don't know why, really, do you?
No.
I mean,
unless we've had it and not realised.
Well, that's perfectly possible. Yeah. Stephen in Lincoln says Sunak will be the biggest political disaster the UK has ever known.
Oh, looking on the bright side
cheerful.
in life, Stephen. Come on.
Really? Biggest political disaster?
I don't know, Stephen, why you think that. I mean, I'd love to know your reasoning behind that. I mean, I you know.
Patrick in Upminster says, suggesting this fabulously wealthy Prime Minister is going to be in it for the country rather than himself is naive.
What's he going to get?
If he's fabulously wealthy anyway, he doesn't need this job, does it?
No,
does he?
I mean, it's good for the... it's good PR, I guess. But I mean, it's not like he's going to have to go on a talking tour afterwards like Boris and make even more money. He's got more money than he knows what to do with. Paul says Sunak is being criticised for not going to COP27 by Labour, but if he did go, Labour would say he's ignoring his responsibilities at home with the economy.
Yes,
well,
true.
Damned if you do, damned if you
Oh,
don't.
absolutely. And Keith says, rather than going to COP27, Boris should be paying attention to and serving his constituency. You mean you can't do both?
And Neil says maybe both Sunak and Hunt, given their huge personal wealth, could both forego some of their salaries. That, at the very least, would show some solidarity with the public. But would you? Margaret Thatcher never claimed her salary as Prime Minister.
That's right.
And
she wasn't wealthy.
No, well, actually, he was doing all right.
He was all right. Yes, that's true. Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know if Rishi Sunak is claiming his salary of what is it, 140,000 or something
Yeah, but
like that.
he could pay for that blooming royal yacht himself.
Well, he could do, yeah.
You always wonder when you get these multi-zillionaires at the head of something and they're asking everybody else to do their bit and everything, you think you could do a heck of a lot with your wealth.
Well, yes.
He could build a hospital with
Yes,
it.
he could.
And finance it and staff it.
Yes, he could.
And it would hardly make a hole in his finances.
However...
Wouldn't that be more useful to the country than him being Prime Minister?
However, if you had loads of money, and let's be honest, be brutally honest, we've got more money than a lot of people in the country because we work, you know, we've got good jobs in this business. Not multi-millionaires, but anyway. But so people could say to us, well, you should give some of your money away.
Yeah.
If you were earning a lot of money and someone told you to give some of it away because it only seemed fair, would you do it? And I think probably
And that's
not.
what's going to be very interesting about the winter fuel allowance thing, is that a lot of people are going to qualify for it, £500-ish, and possibly, you could argue, don't need it. Would you forego it yourself, or would you say, no, I've earned that as much as anyone else?
So you give it to charity. If you want, though, to be fair, I've started getting money off my gas bill now, the £66 a month or whatever it is, and I haven't given it away.
But Rishi Sunak's money is
things.
different. That's different sort of money, isn't it?
Yes, it is a different sort of money. But then...
He could say, I quite agree, we need this amazing vanity project, some are calling it the yacht, that's going to be used or was going to be used by royalty and government business. He could say, all right, I'm going to stop it from the government purse, but what I'll do is I'll pay it myself.
Well, it'd be interesting.
He'd be out of money very quickly if he started doing that on many.
This is it. It doesn't last that long to start giving 250 million away at a time. The only thing I would say to you, Neil, and it's not a bad point, is that my view with these things is always, well, if it was me, what would I do? And I wouldn't be just throwing money around left, right and centre.
No. And we don't know what he does with his money privately.
No.
And you could argue that it's none of our business. A lot of people who are fabulously wealthy in this country do serious charity projects on the side, but they don't talk about it very much. People like Cliff Richard have given, millions. It must add up to millions of pounds over the years to charity. Really? He's always done it very, very quietly. It's gradually become known over the years. But he has, over the years, nearly every year, he's done something enormous with his money for the good of others, but doesn't announce it, as of course you shouldn't. And it's his business how much he gives and to whom, I suppose.
Self-praise is no praise at all, as my mother says. True. Quite right. Anyway, keep
if you don't blow your own trumpet, nobody else will.
Well, that's also a fair point, yeah. gbviews@gbnews.uk. Still to come, we'll take you through the papers.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank and, of course, fun. Every Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
.35 morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Let's get a look now at this morning's newspaper front pages. The Sunday Times starts off with a line from the climate czar who says Rishi Sunak, that's Alok Sharma by the way, he says Rishi Sunak risks undermining Britain's position as a world leader if he decides to abandon COP27.
The Prime Minister will launch a major offensive on crime, according to The Telegraph.
And the Express lead is on the government-funded £250 million yacht that Boris Johnson hoped would signify Britain's global power. Well, it's now been sunk by Rishi.
The Observer looks at the report that claims Boris Johnson will go to COP27.
And the Daily Star... Oh, they must be so pleased they can get Liz Truss back into their front pages. They say that her phone was secretly hacked by Russian intelligence. Lettuce Liz, hacked by Mad Vlad.
Headline writer's dream.
It really is.
Let's go through those papers then with editor of Spike magazine Tom Slater and anthropologist Mariana Hotter. Morning to you both.
Good morning.
Tom, let's kick off with the Sunday Times, should we? And looking at Alok Sharma attacking Rishi Sunak.
Yes, as you were just trailing there, this big intervention ahead of the COP27 meeting in Egypt. So Alok Sharma, previously the president of COP, now the climate czar more broadly. Bit of an axe to grind, I think it's fair to say, as far as he's no longer attending cabinet. He's probably a bit upset about that. But some quite strong words for Rishi Sunak, saying that it's essentially a crying shame that he's not attending COP27. Of course, he's got a lot on his plate, though, Rishi Sunak, hasn't he, with the kind of financial maelstrom here at home.
He could still attend for a few hours, couldn't he?
Well, I suppose it's insofar as there's also, it's not just a sort of glad-handing, there's also negotiations that go on and so on and so forth, and especially because that statement is just, you know, days away now at this point. You can understand why he would be focusing on that. And because he is ultimately, you know, accountable to the British people and our issues at here, not to the kind of supranational set. And also, even if your concern is about COP, it's only every few years that a kind of big agreement is struck, which is why we remember Paris and Glasgow, and we don't necessarily remember the ones in between. So I think there's
not much came out of Glasgow, to be perfectly honest.
In the end, I mean, everyone will remember Alok Sharma, you know, shedding a tear from the, from the platform because he was concerned about the lack of movement.
Wait, but hang on a minute. We're the president of COP. Alok Sharma is the president of the whole international outfit.
Well, he was for...
No, still is now, because it was an official handover.
Yeah,
so we are currently the global leaders in the fight against climate change, except we're not really acting like it. And so even if you want to be cynical about what COP can achieve, This is simply an opportunity for the UK to put itself on an international stage and go, we're quite good at being international leaders. We're very trustworthy. We're independent. We're ambitious. We are a prosperous and functioning nation on the international stage. Except we're kind of floundering that opportunity, I think.
The problem is we're not a prosperous...
Squandering it.
We're not a prosperous nation at the moment, and so he's back in number 10 trying to sort that out. Isn't that a good thing?
Yes, I think he should send King Charles. We definitely do not want Boris Johnson to be trundling about.
Why not? He's very green.
Not really. And also, how many axes does he have to grind? And how much is he the vanguard of the chaos? I think, you know, it has to be forward-looking, it has to be progressive, it has to be ambitious, it has to be embracing a positive, brighter, more hopeful, optimistic future.
We're in the midst of such...
We're squandering it.
Because even looking back to COP, it seems like such a sort of indulgence insofar as, you know, all this talk about green technology, which isn't there yet as far as providing cheap and reliable energy that we need. You get into situations as we did in the past year when the rubber really hits the road and you really need to be able to keep the lights on and so on and so forth. Again, flying out there en masse to go and engage in these kind of glorified photo op.
Surely one of the major reasons that we're in a financial crisis, one of them, is our lack of energy security and not enough forward thinking, frankly, in making sure that we were investing years ago in renewables.
Absolutely bang on.
That's all what COP27 is about. Shouldn't we at least be showing that we're still thinking that way?
Yes.
Why are you laughing?
And doubling down on the commitment to the future rather than going, oh, well, we'll deal with that when we can afford to.
Yes, but
by which point it'll be too late.
But it's not about. But it's not about energy security in that sense, is it? It's about COP is about making commitments to how we're going to tackle the climate change situation. It's not actually where they're going to come away and say, well, actually, we've worked out how to fund this and how to do that and how to build more wind farms. And
it partly is because each government has to pledge and then be held to account on targets that they propose.
Which we will still be doing, just without the Prime Minister being there to do it.
Yeah, this would have happened if it wasn't for the fact that Glasgow happened last year and the fact that there's been a lot of interest about this. COP27 would have passed, broadly speaking, without much consequence. It's not the big one. And also, we talk about our government being held to account to its commitments. It should be held to account to its electorate. And the main concern at the moment is about keeping the lights on, not about expensive and unreliable green technology, which has not been delivering.
No, I want to keep the lights on this winter, but I also want my children to live in a world that is actually survivable.
Well, yes.
I want both those things.
Which is fair enough.
I shouldn't have to choose.
Which is fair enough, but that is not reliant on Sunak or even Charles going to COP27.
Yeah, but it looks as though we're turning our backs on all of the commitments we've made thus far and might make in the future. If the Prime Minister doesn't go, or even somebody much more, somebody from a leading cabinet position.
We've got the last two Prime Ministers going, haven't we? We've got Liz Truss and Boris Johnson going.
I don't want either of them to go. Honestly, I'd rather King Charles go.
Me too.
He'd be quite good. I mean, he actually understands the issues. He cares about it. He can properly represent the UK. And he isn't involved in planning the budget.
Because he can't make...
Because he's not allowed to do
anything. But his very
commitments
presence would signify...
Yes,
we are
it's the optics.
Seriously, surely.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to take COPs seriously, to be honest. They don't seem to achieve anything apart from burning a load of airline fuel.
Yeah, a lot of private jets.
Well, anyway, there you go. There you go. Oh, it's us two against these two. Mary Ann, let's have a look at the Sunday Telegraph, should we? And woke policing on its way out.
Apparently. So, lots of debate around energy. Let's do policing now, shall we? So apparently, sources, unspecified, say that once the Prime Minister has sorted out the economic catastrophes that we're all facing, he's going to, do a number on policing, because that's not going so well either. And we're going to go back to the basics. Have you heard that before? I have.
Back to basics?
Back to basics policing.
Well, isn't this something that Greater Manchester Police have done?
Well, so this is the thing. So there was the chief of the Greater Manchester Police, a chap called Stephen Watson, said that he wants to put, 18 months ago, wanted to put more officers on the beat. He wanted his force to pursue every crime lead. They reduced answering a sort of 999 call from 1 minute 20-something seconds to 7 seconds. So you phone and you immediately get put through to a call handler who can, be there and work out what needs to be done. And it meant that Greater Manchester Police came out of special measures. They'd been inspected and found to be basically a failing force. And this guy has sort of transformed the force and the morale and the outputs. So more people are arrested. I don't actually know about conviction rates, because it's all well and good arresting someone, but then if you can't actually get a case through the courts and get someone charged and, you know, all the rest of it, then it doesn't really count for that much, does it? But the kind of thinking is that that's the approach that they want to roll out across all the forces in the UK, and that people ought to be, you know, fighting actual crime rather than policing bad jokes on Twitter. I agree with that, but I think it's probably a bit of a misrepresentation to suggest that police forces around the country are policing bad jokes on Twitter for most of their time.
I don't know about most of their time, but it was a quite inordinate amount of time. I think there was a study in 2017, Times investigation, they found that 9 people a day were being arrested for online offensive.
That's not very
content.
many.
It was about 3,000 a year or something like that.
That's still not very many. Think of the number of users on Twitter and social media. Think of the harmful and genuinely illegal things that get put on social media. And there are real-world consequences to those things. It's not just pixels.
It's not just down to the social media platforms. They've got to take more responsibility, because then it would take the burden off the police.
Yeah,
and
definitely. But if someone breaks the law online, then it does default to the police's jurisdiction. But it shouldn't be either that or investigating burglary.
Just offensive speech. And then there's that whole non-crime hate incident thing. It's about 150,000 reports of that which have gone through the police system. I mean, it's not everything, of course it's not, but when you think about stretched resources and all the rest of it, the fact they're spending any time on this stuff...
No, they have to, because it's potentially illegal. It's just that they need to be well-funded and resourced and supported enough.
Published online, that's the point.
Yeah.
That's up to the social media platforms, surely.
But also, we should have a police force that's got enough money that it can actually appear at someone's house when you've been burgled, as well as stopping something that is inciting racial violence against a group or a person.
Got to prioritise.
Yes and no. You should also have the money to be able to do all your job, not just a bit of your job.
It would be nice, but we haven't...
That would be nice.
Money is one thing we haven't got at the minute, which is a problem. Mind you, some people have got money, Tom, according to the Sunday Mirror, and they've been giving it to Rishi Sunak.
Yes, so fossil fuels aid rise of Rishi is the headline here, talking about essentially over a quarter of the £530,000 which was donated to his leadership bid, the full-fledged one in the summer, came from people who have interests, it says, in oil, gas or aviation. So essentially trying to suggest here that he's sort of bought and sold by the fossil fuel industry. There's some quotes in here from Ed Miliband, of course, the Shadow Climate Secretary, essentially suggesting this is why he's gone slow on a lot of these climate questions, which I think, aside from how you feel about those questions, doesn't seem a particularly fair representation as far as he was the Chancellor who, with Boris Johnson, really pursued net zero with the passion of a convert. He's a bit of a break on these things as far as he's quite a pragmatic figure. And as we saw with lockdown, he also tends to be the sort of person as to say, well, how are we going to pay for this, or so on and so forth. He did maintain the fracking ban. I mean, I think these are things to his detriment. I think we need all the energy we can get at this particular point. But I think this particular attack line, I just don't know if it's going to work, just insofar as, broadly speaking, he has been part of an administration which is, as I say, pursued net zero with the kind of zeal.
But when you accept donations from large companies like oil companies or fossil fuel companies, you do take... It does compromise you politically, surely it does.
Well, it's difficult because we're sort of getting into a situation of guesswork and kind of reading into their motivations. Because, I mean, also, he did impose that windfall tax, which, again, was not the sort of thing you would do if you were in the pocket of the oil industry.
Which is now being extended.
So it is the sort of thing where obviously money in politics is a perennial problem, and we can definitely have a discussion about how do you rein that in. But at the same time, when it gets to a situation where you just assume everyone is in the pocket of everyone else, just always assuming bad faith, I don't think that's a good position to be in either.
No. Look, you were bleating on about optics earlier on. No. But optics are going there. No. It's not an offensive term. I like sheep. Anyway. No, you know, I've known you a long time.
Go on.
Mary, the Sunday Express says...
Good job, we're friends.
It is, yeah. In terms of optics, is looking at the lecterns used at Number 10.
I love this story. It's my favourite story of all the Sunday papers. It's looking at the different lecterns of the Prime Ministers since David Cameron.
They always have a different lectern.
Different lectern. It appears to always be made of wood.
That's a waste of money.
I'm sure maybe they reuse the other ones. They don't just like set fire to them or throw them in the back garden.
Crazy.
Maybe they get to take them home. Maybe Liz Truss has one instead of a coat bag.
Very nice.
So the question is, I don't know if you've got the picture of this. So David Cameron had a sort of flamboyant hourglass-shaped sort of carved wood number.
Yeah.
Theresa May, a straight and simple curved pole.
It was dull, wasn't it?
Boris Johnson, a bit of a sort of shield shape, suggesting that perhaps he was protecting himself from the onslaught.
Right.
Fill in the blanks as to why. Liz Truss had sort of like Jenga blocks stacked in a twist.
It was lovely, actually.
It was sort of
there
quite
we are.
lovely.
There we've got the different ones
the
there.
kind of suggestion, perhaps, that what you see there is instability, a kind of a carefully but slightly wobbly pyramid of hope and faith. And Rishi Sunak has gone for steady, straight, no nonsense.
About half a foot shorter than the rest, probably.
It will be
that
short,
would be the only good reason for different lecterns to me, is obviously
And
you
no
need them at
frills.
different heights, wouldn't you?
Yes.
I have to say, I like David Cameron's the best out of all of those.
Yeah, I think so.
A bit sinuous, a bit curvy, a little bit sexy.
Yeah, a bit hourglass.
Well, I don't know. I
think
wonder
it
if that's a bit too
every other
flashy
country-
for this kind of
Every
austerity.
other country makes pronouncements
going
from
into.
the White House or some big place, usually indoors with lots of flags behind them and everything. We get out this lectern and you can see that the power cable trailed across the road, can't you?
The cat
and all
watching.
this business, the cat's always watching. Yeah. And I just wonder what it looks like to other countries. It looks so amateur.
You have to sort of stand outside your front door to like, oh, hear ye, this is the news from number 10.
And now the roar of protesters is always in the background, making it
Yes,
sound
you
like
can
a war
always
zone.
hear that. Yeah. They're kept as far back as possible you can hear.
Sort of haven't got a driveway to stand in, have
No.
they? You've got a bit of a pavement straight onto
Like
it.
literally standing on the street.
It's only Margaret Thatcher who closed Downing Street off, wasn't it? Before then, you could just wander.
Oh, really?
around
Could
it.
you walk up?
Yes, you could.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But that
I
was
always
security,
think it'd be quite nice if they had a few flowers. Like, it always looks very sparse
Think how
and
much it would
barren.
cost?
Well, that's true.
Waste of public money.
Perennial, not the ones that you have to buy.
And you see all of the world's
plastic
media
waste.
opposite, and the commentators who are popping up on the news every so often, they have to crouch right down so that the photographers can take pictures over their heads. It's just so amateur the way we do it, don't you think?
It is, yeah.
I think it's raw.
Raw.
It's raw. I mean, they're quite exposed, aren't they? There's none of that sort of backdrop and fanciness where it's all like, smoke and mirrors and a bit theatrical. It's someone standing in a street
and then they
having
have
to
turn
kind
around
of
and walk
hold
back in the
themselves to
door,
account.
How many of us say they're getting all of this? I like Theresa as a person. I mean,
It was
I think she was a values politician.
I mean, that looked as though it's from
dull,
B&Q, doesn't it?
Not there's anything wrong with being
Or Sainsbury's Doodah or whatever.
but yes,
you know,
it
it's
does
very ordinary. It looks as though she might have made it herself.
It does, yeah. It's not
But
very
I quite like that, a sort of like no nonsense. It's not about the flash and the show, because she's making it's a distinction between her and David Cameron, what came before, isn't it? Partly, but I'm taking this seriously. I think Rishi Sunak has gone back to it. I'm taking this seriously.
I can understand why Liz Truss liked hers, because it is quite an unusual design. I quite like that. But
I mean, you would if it had all gone well. You'd be like,
Well,
that was a
yeah.
really good lecture.
Yeah.
Whereas now you're like, oh,
I
that
wonder
didn't
if
work
they do
out,
get
did it?
given them at the end of their tenure.
We
Take
should
that
find
home
out.
with you. Stick it in the corner and put a plant pot on the top.
Yeah, well, that'd be all right, wouldn't it? Be a collector's item, I should imagine.
Oh, yeah, she could flog it on eBay, couldn't she? Or similar auction sites that are available.
Yes, quite right. Marianne, Tom, thank you. We're done with you for now. Thank you
Okay,
very much.
right on. Bye.
You may leave.
There's a lot more to talk about. Next time, maybe we want to talk about Liz Truss's phone being allegedly hacked. Or, no, it was hacked.
Definitely hacked.
Yeah, which caused her a lot of stress.
I bet it did. I bet it caused her a lot of stress. Who knows what's on her phone?
Yes.
All sorts of
it
gossip.
was her phone while she was Foreign Secretary. And apparently it was discovered that it was hacked, they think, by Russian agents whilst she was Foreign Secretary. But they discovered that whilst during the middle of the leadership, I was going to say leadership crisis. Maybe it is the leadership contest, yeah. And it is locked away in a cupboard somewhere or vault somewhere because it is so seriously compromised. They can't even touch it now. I think to activate it would immediately alert the Kremlin.
That's funny. Oh, I'd love to go through her WhatsApp messages, wouldn't you?
Well, apparently there were several personal messages between her and Kwasi Kwarteng about previous prime ministers.
Oh, really?
And, yes, And who knows what sort of things they were talking about.
I wondered where you were going with that for a minute. Oh, well, there you go. Interesting, isn't it? Well, of course, can you imagine the stress that they face in number 10? It must be quite something. I mean, there's a new survey out claiming that loads of us are just stressed in our ordinary everyday jobs, particularly healthcare and education.
Yes,
the most affected.
And presumably inside number 10. Shall we talk to leading psychologist Sir Carrie Cooper, who joins us now to discuss? Hello there, lovely to see you.
Yeah, good to see you again, Anne. I used to be interviewed by you on TVAM many years ago.
Years ago, absolutely.
Yeah, just a few years ago.
I mean, I know we were going to talk about this subject of stress in the workplace for ordinary people, as it were, but it does make you wonder about stress inside number 10, because apparently not only was Liz Truss compromised by a phone that was hacked, but apparently she recently, in the last few days of her premiership, became very stressed about the threat of nuclear war and what Putin was going to do, to the extent that she was even asking for hourly weather reports because she was worried about a nuclear fallout cloud being blown towards Britain. Yeah. Can you only imagine how any Prime Minister copes with this sort of stress?
Yeah, well, I mean, in that kind of a job, normally people are fairly resilient, but there comes a point in time when you just can't cope. I mean, this is quite an interesting survey from Silver Cloud Health, because what they did is they looked at 500 employers and 1,000 employees. And I think for most of us, whether it's politicians or nurses or managers or presenters on television, stress at work is the leading cause of sickness absence. It now represents something like 57% of all long-term sickness absence, the biggest cause of stress. And, sure, politicians, but, there are a lot of other people, normal people, who, experience stress these days. And think about it. We had the financial crime. I mean, you couldn't pick. My books are selling like hotcakes. You couldn't predict from the financial crisis of 2008. We went all the way through, people worried about their jobs, lots of people losing their jobs and everything else. Then just as we're coming out of it, we have Brexit, which divided the whole nation, caused a lot of insecurity, stress on people about what the future is going to look like, the economy, my job. And just when we're kind of trying to deal with that kind of issue, we get hit with a pandemic. Now it's the cost of living crisis, Ukraine, all of that. And the levels of stress on people in general, but also in the workplace, is astronomical. And the Silver Cloud report shows it. 50% say they're suffering from stress. It's affecting their ability to do their work properly. It's affecting their performance, their relationships. And employers are increasingly concerned about this because they're losing people.
But, Carrie, we need to become more resilient, don't we? We can't change the world, so we need to change ourselves, don't we?
Well, two things. There's things you can do for yourself, right? And there are things that the employer has to do for you, help you create the right kind of culture. I was talking to an HR director a number of years ago of a big financial services business. And I said, why are you guys all of a sudden into this well-being stuff and doing stress management at work and all the rest of it? And he said to me, regrettable turnover. And I said, well, that sounds a nice concept. Maybe I should write a book about it. What is it? And he said, we can't afford to lose people. We lost so many people during the financial crisis. We want to retain the millennials and the Z generation. How do we do that? We have to create the right culture. We don't have to create a long working hours culture. We can let people work more flexibly. We should engage them in decision making. We need to do this. Our productivity per capita, we're the bottom of the G7 and on 17th in the G20 on productivity per capita. Our productivity hasn't been good for many, many years. And aside from just the health of people, we're not functioning well. And I think it's the way people are managed, the hours they work. And I think we need to do something pretty dramatic.
Oh, well, we shall have to see if any employers and things are listening to you.
Yeah, it's a huge subject.
Yes, Carrie Cooper, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed.
Again. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? I mean, I just sort of think...
Are we snowflakey?
I think we're snowflakey.
See, I think that's what my mum would say if she were here. She'd say, we just had to get on with it.
Yeah.
But then nobody talked about the people who fell by the wayside then, did they?
Maybe that's the thing. Anyway, look, we're out of time, but we shall be back in a couple of minutes with all of the day's top stories, so don't go anywhere.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio.
and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel. Britain's
news channel.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Every Saturday at 2 o'clock, join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain. I'm not afraid to give you a platform and say it how it is.
Come on, make the case. Something like this is very, very important to people.
And we're always up for a laugh on this show.
God, honestly, you'd think there were no problems in the world.
Real Britain, every Saturday on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
The Prime Minister is warned that spending cuts could take us back to the austerity of 12 years ago.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock. It's Sunday, the 30th of October. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Dan.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here are the top stories you need to know about this morning.
Well, ahead of the autumn budget, the Prime Minister and Chancellor have been told that plans to cut spending to fill a £50 billion black hole could take us back to the times of austerity.
And what's next for Northern Ireland? Another Assembly election looms. A date has yet to be decided. We'll bring you all the latest updates.
And of course, it's very nearly Halloween. Costumes at the ready, spooky snacks prepped, perhaps pumpkins carved.
Dogs all dressed up.
Yeah, if you need any inspiration. Here's one I made earlier. Did that last night, not bad.
Very good.
And if that's not enough to get you in the pumpkin carving mood, we've got an expert on hand to show us how to do it properly. That's, oh, look at that, it's William and Kate on their wedding day.
What? Oh, it is, yes.
That's very fancy, isn't
That's
it?
brilliant.
In the meantime, show us your creations if you would like to. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yes, a lot of you have already been getting in touch with your pictures. Do continue. If you've got a lovely pumpkin to show us, please take a picture of it and send it in. GBViews at gbnews.uk, like he said.
Now, as the Prime Minister prepares his autumn budget, a think tank has warned that a freeze on public spending could see some services return to levels seen in the era of austerity 12 years ago.
Yeah, well, that warning comes as Rishi Sunak and his Chancellor Jeremy Hunt are considering up to £50 billion of spending cuts and tax hikes in an effort to bring, to actually fix the nation's economy if they can.
Well, let's get more reaction from the Deputy Digital Political Editor of the Daily Express Online, Dan Falvey. Morning to you, Dan. Look, I mean, we know about this black hole. We know there's going to be, the autumn statement is going to be very tough. We're aware of all of that. But how do you consider all of this has been handled in the first week of Prime Minister Sunak?
I think Rishi Sunak's had a good first week on the whole. On the whole, his party have rallied behind him. There's now a bit of unity within the Conservative Party, which we've not seen for, we're not just talking weeks, it's been a number of months or even years since we've seen this kind of unity within the party. And the markets have stabilised and calmed. The markets feel confident about who's in number 10, that there is going to be an economic plan and that there is going to be something done about the current economic situation. So on those fronts, it's been a good first week. When it comes to the voters, they're still, we're yet to see how they feel. We're yet to see many polls come out from his first week in charge and see how they've reacted. It's going to take quite a while for him to turn around exactly how people feel about the Conservative Party, though. There's such a gap between Conservatives and Labour. It's going to take a long time for him to turn around their situation.
He's not, of course, the first Prime Minister who has been previously the Chancellor of the Exchequer, and he's inherited Jeremy Hunt from Liz Truss. So who do you think is being the real Chancellor at the moment?
Well, you're right. It's not the first time to see a Chancellor. Let's not forget Gordon Brown was a Chancellor before he went, and we saw how that ended for him. It didn't end overly well. There's definitely going to be a tussle now. We're going to see Rishi Sunak is going to want to get his hands on the books himself, and he's going to be poring over every single detail. And you can bet that anything that Jeremy Hunt wants to do, if Rishi Sunak disagrees, Rishi Sunak will win. We've always seen that there's a fallout between number 10 and number 11. That's rather normal in British politics. But when there's a former Chancellor in charge of number 10, you normally see that they're even more aggressive in pushing for what they want because they feel that they know and that they feel like they're the expert.
Well, that's not necessarily a bad thing, is it? I mean, is that pleasing to the markets, do we think, in creating some sort of stability? Because, I mean, Jeremy Hunt's seen as a safe pair of hands, but he never stepped foot inside the Exchequer until he was appointed Chancellor. So does Rishi Sunak, in this particular scenario, bring even more stability?
Well, I think, to be fair to Jeremy Hunt, he's gone on a lot about how he used to be an entrepreneur and a businessman. Now, that is rather different to being an economist, but it's not like he is a complete novice when it comes to the numbers. I think the danger is what happens behind closed doors and what happens publicly. We saw with David Cameron and George Osborne that they had their own falling outs, but everything happened behind closed doors, and in public they put on a united front. We saw when Tony Blair and Gordon Brown, when they were in number 10, number 11, the very public fallouts that happened. And that's the key when it comes to Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt and how it calms the markets, how it makes voters feel. It's how much can they agree on their disagreements behind closed doors, and when they go out to speak to the public, present a united front and say, this is our plan for Britain that we're both behind.
Meanwhile, I wonder if I can ask you about Liz Truss's mobile phone that was allegedly hacked by Russian spies during the period she was Foreign Secretary. This was discovered during the leadership contest. And apparently the mobile phone is so compromised that it's locked away in a vault somewhere at the moment. How on earth did that happen?
I wish I knew. But it's concerning to say the least. And I think there's a lot of criticism that I've seen in the last 12 hours or so since this story started to emerge about Liz Truss. Scarily, sadly, every politician, every senior politician is at risk from being hacked, and Russians are doing this every day. They're permanently trying to hack politicians' phones. It's rather unfortunate that it is the Foreign Secretary, then Prime Minister, whose phone they managed to eventually get into, given then her own turmoil that she had while she was in number 10. Unfortunately, it's done her credibility no good whatsoever. But dare I say it, this could have happened to other politicians. We saw a few months ago that the Defence Secretary, Ben Wallace, ended up being hacked and speaking to some pranksters in Russia about Ukraine. So this does happen, unfortunately, in this day and age.
Yeah, we're not in a point where I remember when Barack Obama went into the White House, it was all because he had his beloved BlackBerry, and they created a special phone for it. It had to be like an ultra-secure phone. Are we reaching a point now where we need to have special ultra-secure phones for our top politicians?
I think we are. I really think we are, because I say this is a daily threat now. And already the precautions taken, for example, in a lot of government buildings, they're not allowed to take their phones into meetings. They're forced to be left outside to keep them as secure as possible. But if that phone gets hacked, there's access to emails, texts, and as you were saying earlier, I think there's a good couple of years of history of texts on that Liz Truss phone that Russians will have access to. That's unsustainable. That can't go on. We can't have that as a situation going forwards. That needs to be changed, and changed quickly.
Yeah, it does. Dan, good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
I just think it's fascinating.
I'm very surprised that their phones aren't already so encoded or, you know, so security safe. You would have thought they would be. This was her personal mobile phone.
And they should just have it all sorted out. I mean, there are security systems like, I think Knox is the one that Samsung uses, and BlackBerry. I can't think what that. But I mean, BlackBerry phones were extremely secure, but of course they're all bygone era now, aren't they? Times are changing.
It does seem appalling, and you would expect more of our security services, actually, wouldn't you? That the Prime Minister's phone, which should be being monitored, I guess. Well, I don't mean the content of it monitored. I mean the security surrounding it, monitored and kept totally up to date all the time. She wasn't Prime Minister then; she was Foreign Secretary. But look what an important job that is. The very idea that compromising conversations between her and her trusted cabinet ministers could have been hacked and then used against her in some way by Russian agents. I just can't believe that we've been so clumsy as to let it happen.
Talking of Rishi, Anne says, morning Anne, it's his wife's money, not his money, so stop going on about it.
Oh,
well,
no, a lot of it's his money.
A lot of it's his money. Yeah. She's got more, but a lot of it's his. Mark says, people with money contribute more to the economy than most, so stop moaning about them.
Do they?
Well...
Do they? Depends what they do, doesn't it?
Well, it sort of depends what they do, but if they're on PAYE, they do.
Stephen says, furlough should never have happened. We couldn't afford it.
Oh,
what about the people who really needed it?
Yeah, what's the alternative? I don't know. Gary says, why don't the media focus on people flying to COP27? Double standards again. It's a one big con. I don't think it's a big con, Gary, but I think you're absolutely right. Some things do need to happen face-to-face. Do they all need to fly to Sharm el-Sheikh for this? Did they all need to fly to Glasgow last year, whenever it was? I don't know.
John says, I wonder how much carbon footprint Rishi Sunak has made to make 700 million, and what would happen if he bumped into Greta Thunberg at COP27? She'd probably say something quite loud.
How's she getting to Sharm el-Sheikh? Is she going on a yacht again?
I don't know. But these, but you say people have to meet face to face to get things done.
Sometimes.
And surely, energy security, our environment is terribly, terribly important.
Alan in Lincoln, and I sort of get what you're saying.
I like this.
He said politicians should never get involved in sport, and a man should never interfere with nature. I'm 85. My dad taught me that at a very early age. But it's true, but our very existence interferes with nature, doesn't it, Alan? You know, the fact that we're, technology, building things, broadcasting, using electricity, it's all interfering with...
It certainly does.
...nature.
Susan in Oldham says, Rishi Sunak needs to stay home and sort out the problems we have now, like people having to struggle with keeping warm.
Yeah.
And Jason agrees, Sunak is completely correct not to attend, as we have so much at home to sort out now. These meetings never achieve anything anyway. Well, I disagree with you on that one, but I do think maybe Rishi can't attend, and he has got a lot on his plate, and maybe he wants to show the British public that he is putting Britain first, actually, at the moment. But he could be sending somebody else, or King Charles could go.
See, it's interesting. See, I agree with Jason. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Jason, but then that's what we're all about, agreeing to disagree.
I still think the King should go.
Yeah, well, I'm glad he's not. I'm glad he's not.
Do you think Boris should go?
Well, why
I
not?
hope he does. Why shouldn't he?
Well, why
He's
shouldn't
got something to say.
Well, Boris is big on the green agenda, so let him go.
Yeah, but if Rishi doesn't go and King Charles doesn't go, then the most important Briton there will be Boris Johnson. So they're allowing that to happen. They're allowing a vacuum in which he will fill.
Well, he's only a backbencher.
Yeah, he's only a backbencher, but he is Boris Johnson.
Yeah. Oh,
he's got something to say, and he'll say it, and the press will follow him round, and he will say something if he's there. I just wonder if he will go, and whether you think he should.
Can they stop him?
No, of course they can't stop him.
There you go.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
he'd be a great speaker at it. He'd be invited to speak, wouldn't he? I'll bet you they've asked him already. So should he go? That's the point. If he decides to go, yes, he could be seen to be undermining everything Rishi's trying to do.
Maybe.
Or putting himself forward. Or keeping his status very strong.
But we wouldn't say that if he was Ukraine envoy, as some people are saying he should be. We'd be saying, oh, that's good. That's good. We wouldn't see it as undermining. I mean, Scott says our PM is needed here for the UK, not attending some pointless conference. I agree. I agree with you, Scott.
I don't.
No, anyway, keep your thoughts going through. Just going to keep us two entertained this morning. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Shall we bring you up to date with the latest headlines? South Korea's president has declared a period of national mourning following a deadly stampede last night. At least 151 people were killed and 82 injured in the capital, Seoul. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has tweeted saying all our thoughts are with South Koreans at this very distressing time. It was a Halloween do.
Yeah, can't imagine quite how that has happened. Russia's suspended a UN-brokered Black Sea grain deal with Ukraine after an alleged Ukrainian drone attack on its fleet in Crimea. President Biden called the move purely outrageous and said it would increase starvation. The United Nations have resumed contacts with Russian authorities.
And the government has been urged to launch an urgent investigation following reports that Liz Truss's phone was hacked. The Daily Mail has revealed that the former Prime Minister's phone was hacked by Russian agents. The breach was supposedly discovered during the summer Tory leadership campaign when Liz Truss was Foreign Secretary.
The Princess of Wales has urged those suffering with an addiction not to let shame hold them back from getting help. Catherine made the comments via video on the first day of Addiction Awareness Week. She's patron of the addiction recovery charity, the Forward Trust.
(8:14), the Northern Ireland
7:14.
Secretary. It says 8:14 there.
Oh, that clock's wrong.
Oh!
It's that one.
There's me been getting it wrong for the last hour or so.
did, yeah.
7:14. I do beg your pardon.
Yeah, because the clocks went back, didn't we?
Oh, and that one hasn't been done.
Been checked.
Oh.
Why hasn't? Because that's on a big computer screen. So, like, why that hasn't gone automatically?
Did you wake up specially early to check whether your phone had updated itself? Because I did.
Well, I woke up at what was 2 o'clock, and I just woke up. And then thought, oh, it's 2 o'clock, I've got another... And then realised it's because it was 3 o'clock, really. So.
And that's when I noticed, because I woke up just before midnight, and I thought, oh, I'll wait to see it tick over. And, of course, it didn't, because it doesn't change at midnight.
No, 2 o'clock.
So then I woke up again just before 1 o'clock. I mean, you know, alarm in the head. And, again, it didn't do it at 1. And I thought, well, I wonder if it's not going to do it. And that's what got me worrying. It did it at 2 o'clock this morning, yeah.
Anyway,
it is 7:15 now. It took a minute to put that right. The Northern Ireland Secretary is going to have to call an election to be held within 12 weeks after politicians missed the deadline to restore a devolved government.
Now, in a statement, Chris Heaton-Harris says he's extremely disappointed that the executive has not reformed.
The most likely date, then, for the election is the 15th of December, although a date for a poll doesn't have to be set immediately.
Well, let's talk to our reporter, Doogie Beattie, who's live at Stormont for us this morning. I mean, what a mess, Doogie. I mean, this is going to cost millions, isn't it, to put on an election in Northern Ireland? And is it actually going to achieve anything at all?
Well, you've hit both those completely correct. It is going to cost millions of pounds to bring them back here again, and it'll probably be the same two parties back, actually strengthened. What order they're in, it does not matter, because the First and Deputy First Minister are exactly the same office, and the protocol problems are still there. The DUP will still not go into power as long as those protocol problems are there. So that has to be negotiated first. So if I was a betting man, I might think that Heaton-Harris might sort of fudge this for a while or two, go back to the EU and say, look, even if we have elections here, the same result is going to happen. And as I've spoken in the past, the protocol problem is really an EU problem. It's trying to keep the security of the single market correct, and that pretty much could be thrown back to the EU and say, well, OK, if it's such a good deal, if you say the protocol is such a good deal, having advantages to both markets, let's put the Republic of Ireland into that. That'll give them access to the British markets, and they will have their goods checked going into the European markets. So Sinn Féin, of course, are the largest party here. They're also the largest party in the south. They won't want to do that because they're looking to try and take control in any new elections in the Republic of Ireland, and that would hurt them politically. So those negotiations are going to be made all the trickier by that. But what does it mean to the people of Northern Ireland that there is no government here? Well, any devolved institution, most economists will tell you, actually doesn't do any better financially. But what it does do is allow locally elected people to spend local money on things like infrastructure, health, policing, education. And those are the big ticket items. Those are the ones that Chris Heaton-Harris is going to have to take control of. Policing, education and health. And of course, this place was out for 1,044 days in 2017 when Sinn Féin did exactly what the DUP are doing and refused to take their seats. And they were only back a matter of weeks before the pandemic hit. And it could be argued that our national health here was in no fit shape to deal with the pandemic that came down the road. But local people here benefit as they do in Scotland, as they do in Wales. But really, business gets round legislation. Business and politics actually work together better. They evolve legislation. Business leaders usually find a way around it, and then they talk to the politicians, and politicians bring it forward from there. One problem that really is going to come here is what will fill the void of this place being down. That's the worrying part for the people of Northern Ireland.
And Doogie, what about the ordinary people you mentioned there? I mean, everybody's struggling to, pay their fuel bills this winter, worrying about the cost of living in general, and rising prices of just about everything. Meanwhile, they're going to spend a fortune on an election that isn't going to achieve anything. It seems immoral, doesn't it?
Well, it is. It very much is. And if you watched our reports last week, even the goods coming into Northern Ireland, because of the protocol, have about £300 per pallet that the British taxpayer has to pay for, and then about another £150 per pallet for local businesses. That all goes on to the cost of the goods coming into Northern Ireland because of this oven-ready deal that Boris Johnson had. And that's coming out, well, businesses in England and Scotland and Wales aren't wanting to deal so much with Northern Ireland. So therefore, there is a lack of choice, and that in itself is putting the price of goods up. So the cost of living here is much worse than it is anywhere else because of what's happening down those roads. But you are absolutely right. People here are disgusted that they're saying, hold on, we had an election, you couldn't get it right. The DUP are saying we had a mandate, we stood upon it, and we were voted back in. And that's also correct. So really this is back to London and Brussels to sort out the protocol problem first before we can have local governance back here. But it is a terrible waste of money. But what we have seen, and this is the amazing part, that it was always put here that there was money here. The money was here to spend on cost of living. It now turns out that there's a £650 million black hole in the finances here. So there was no money to hand out for local government. But what they could have done was handed things out like oil vouchers. Northern Ireland still has an awful lot of oil heating involved in it because the gas infrastructures here are not the same. We have a lot of small villages, and even our cities are not really cities. They are called cities, but there's not enough people in it to be a city as you would think of a city. So therefore the infrastructure is not here for that. If there's heating coupons or some sort of subsidies to heating and lighting and electricity, that would usually be handed out through here. There's going to have to be some way that those subsidies can come in, as they do across the rest of the UK. And without some sort of administration behind, that will be extremely hard to do.
OK. Doogie, for now, thanks very much.
Crazy, isn't it?
Oh, dear, if you're in Northern Ireland, want to get in touch, gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Meanwhile, you have been getting in touch with your wonderful pumpkins in anticipation, that's the word I was looking for, of Halloween. And Pam in Malden says, my 4 grandchildren carved these on Thursday, and I grew them myself.
Oh, well done.
So lots of pride there, and they're really good ones.
Excellent. Dave said, here is my pumpkin. Oh, wow, that's very
love it.
intricate.
And
very
unusual.
intricate. Won first prize at our family event last night.
Great family event idea. Yeah, you could do that with a family. It's still
a bit like a sort of Maori mask
or
thing,
a
isn't it?
gingerbread house sort of thing. Is that, you're seeing a Maori mask? I'm seeing a gingerbread house. But
there you go.
It is, in fact, a pumpkin. Lizzie says, my pumpkin, the one on the right, doesn't look like me, but my partner's on the left looks just like him.
Dear.
You are a pair, is all I can say.
Dear me. Karen says, my granddaughter Sophia carved these.
Oh,
She's
hello,
6.
Sophia.
And it's my 60th birthday tomorrow.
I love it.
Happy birthday for tomorrow.
I love that one's got a sort of crown on it.
Lovely.
Really well done. And finally, Anne says, I thought this pic might amuse you. This is my...
Well, let's lose the strap if
This
we can.
is my 5-month-old great-granddaughter, Aurora Coralie. Yes, let's lose the strap and then we'll be able to see the whole picture. because that
Oh.
that's a beautiful baby in a pumpkin.
Oh, that's
a brilliant
lovely.
photograph. Thank you very much. Shall we have a look at yours again?
Oh yeah, this is what I did last night.
Stephen was busy, and that is spectacular, or spooktacular,
Spooktacular,
as you would say.
It's pretty. I'm quite impressed, I have to say.
Yeah, it's very, very good.
It's worked out jolly well.
And how long did it take?
About 40 minutes, I think.
That's very well done.
It's a lot of, and getting the mouth
zigzaggy
out
thing.
that was the problem.
Yeah.
So
Because did you take the top off, or have you left the top on?
Well, I took it off and scooped
And
it
then-
out.
yeah, and then put it- you've
But put
placed
the
it
top back on again.
It's very well done.
Can't leave them with a hole in it.
It's when you put the light in and then turn the lights off.
Oh yeah, it looks much better with the lights in.
If you've got great pictures of your pumpkin carving or anything else you're doing special for Halloween, do send it in. You know how to do it. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Oh, Tony in Suffolk's been in touch. So today, later on today, he's off out with a group of friends of 17 people, that's a lot, who are taking me out to see our friends singing in Ipswich.
Singing.
Very nice too. Hope you have a lovely day doing that.
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, we'd love to hear what you're up to today. It is a Sunday, and the weather is going to be mild. It wasn't as warm as the forecasters were saying yesterday.
No, it wasn't.
I went home yesterday to a freezing house again because I thought it would be warmer.
Right.
I actually got my son's sleeping bag out, from when he goes camping. And I sat it there in the sleeping bag just to warm up. Yeah. Because I am still determined not to turn the heating on yet.
No, don't turn it on.
You have, though.
No.
You did say?
No, I did. I put the underfloor heating on downstairs a few weeks ago, and the house got very hot so quickly that now so it was on for 2 days, so now back off again.
Well, there I
so
was.
no.
I was a little old lady sat in a sleeping bag yesterday, but it was really cosy.
Oh, there you go. It's the way to do it. Much more to come for you, including all the sports news with Aidan. We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
To each and every one of you.
for helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio.
and online. We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's
News channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
"7:28 morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV and on your radio.
Shall we find out what's happening sport-wise today? Aidan McGee is with us. Hi there.
Morning, guys. How are you?
Yeah, all right.
We're very well.
Nice to see you.
When you came into the studio, there was a lovely waft of a very nice aftershave.
Oh, yeah, it's called Green Irish Tweed by Creed, yeah. I think Eamon Holmes wears it.
Really?
Yeah, he does.
I've not noticed it on Eamon, but
No.
I've noticed it on you.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, yeah, the idea is that it lasts, it lingers a little bit. So after I've gone,
washing.
yeah. When I've gone home later on, you're clocking off. You'll still have the waft in here, hopefully.
Oh, sure. Lovely.
But no, talking about bad smells or good smells. Leeds United haven't won a game in 69 days. They go to Anfield in the late kick-off yesterday, desperately needing a win. You get sacked for losing just a handful of games now. That's the world we live in, football-wise. Liverpool had been in very patchy form since the start of the season. They've had some great results, beating Man City 1-0, beating Bournemouth 9-0, but then losing at home, or losing away to a couple of games as well, and struggling a little bit in the early stages of Europe. But Leeds United go there. Anfield is a fortress. They hadn't won there in 21 years. Liverpool hadn't lost there in, 19 months. And then Leeds turn them over 2-1. And so anyone who says that the Premier League is getting a little bit too predictable, this is one that flies in the face of that, because as you can see from the pictures there, the pictures of, that's this guy Crescencio Somerville, who this time yesterday, nobody outside of his own household, I think, had heard of. Oh. And he goes and plunders the winner about 3 minutes from time, and it was a massive relief. And then the inquest goes on about Liverpool, who on earth, you can see the Leeds fans, for the benefit of our radio listeners, celebrating. That's Liverpool just after they scored the equalising goal. There's a big inquest about Liverpool, what happens now, because there's an interesting thing about their manager, Jurgen Klopp. When he was in Germany, he had managed two teams. He managed Borussia Dortmund and he managed a team called Mainz before that, Mainz. And he always struggled in his 7th season. He's now in season number 7 at Liverpool.
It gets the 7-year itch.
That's
glitch.
exactly what they call it.
7-year glitch.
Yes, that's right, glitch. Yeah, that's probably the best way to describe it. Now, he's been defending it all season, saying, this is ridiculous, it's just a statistical anomaly. But goodness me, there's some parallels. I mean, Dortmund were doing so well back in, 2013-14. They got to the Champions League final in 2013. By 14-15, so 18 months later, they literally fell off a cliff. In fact, a lot of people were quite surprised when you got a Liverpool job on the back of a season like that. But it's happening all over again. Now, I hope, given what he brings to the Premier League with his charisma and everything like that, and everything he's done for the game, I hope he does ride it out. But yesterday's result against a team struggling like Leeds, as I say, Leeds massively needed the win. But yeah, it was a turn up for the books, put it that way.
Talk about people riding it out. Graham Potter.
Well, yeah, he had to.
I mean, he's going to have to. I mean, he's moved from Brighton to Chelsea, faced Brighton, got booed, and then got hammered.
Well, he's got a nice designer fade in his hair as well, and he's got this new designer stubble, so he's stepping up in the world. Something like that. I've had mine a while though, really. I had mine when I was 9 years old. So he goes back to Brighton, where he was hugely successful. He left there 5 weeks ago. I think the booing came from the fact that Brighton didn't like the fact that they're a well-organised club, well-run. They do a lot in their community. They had achieved heights under Graham Potter they've not achieved in their history. They'd never beaten Chelsea in a league game in their entire history until yesterday. That's how big a thing it was. And I think I just don't like the fact that they were like a month into the season and Chelsea just come along and take their manager. Does it work like that in normal corporate life? I'm not really sure it does all the time. You normally have to serve a period of gardening leave, and suddenly Chelsea can just come along and pinch your gaffer. He's going to Chelsea. Listen, he was unbeaten in 9 games, and he goes down there yesterday. He gets booed from all around the ground. And you could see, despite, they were shocked anyway just because they lost 4-1. But after the game, he was a bit taken aback by it. He said, look, I did a really good job at this club, but everyone's entitled to their opinion. And I guess it can't be nice. You think you give your life to somewhere for 3 or 4 years, and then you go around there 5 weeks later, and it just sounds like you're not being appreciated, doesn't it?
It must be terrifying to hear an entire stadium booing you as you walk round.
Do you think, what do you think? Do you think it would distract you from your work on the day, do you think?
Oh, yes. Don't you think it would lower your spirits so far?
The thing is, I wonder, I think he was going there expecting a good reception, which he was entitled to. He's done a great job there.
You'd think, why bother?
Yeah, I know. I don't know, that salary might have something to do with
it. It might do. Can we have a look at something really positive?
Yes.
Which is the Women's Rugby World Cup. 41-5, England smashing
Yeah,
Australia.
that was the women. I mean, that's a really real statement victory, because in rugby league, Australia are they're the side you've got to beat. You know, I mean, England are very strong across the whole board, but the problem for them over the years in the men's and women's section is that you've got to beat Australia. That's where rugby league is particularly strong. Look at the one below that. The England men had a much easier time of it beating Greece for 94-4. Now, this is the risk in this tournament was that we've seen in rugby union recently. It's all about the internationals. You know, if Ireland are playing France on a Saturday night in November, they'll pack out a pub in Clapham. The club game is not so important, or not so strong, which is why we've seen Wasps go into administration. The opposite is the case in rugby league. It's all about the clubs. You go to the northwest of England or Warwickshire, or Yorkshire rather. You've got Leeds, you've got Warrington, you've got Widnes, you've got all these clubs. Hull KR. The international game isn't quite as strong. Now, having said that, every minute of it is shown on the BBC, and it really helps because it's a one-stop shop. And you can go in there and you can see everything you want to see. They're averaging about 1.5, 1.8 million viewers every single time they play. When they played Samoa on the opening day, it's been really good. They've had massive online engagement as well. They've got the Paralympics, or the disability... Paralympics, sorry, the disability section as well. I think that starts next week. They've dovetailed the women's game alongside the Women's World Cup alongside it. So you can see everything in a one-stop shop. Whereas if you watch most sports and trying to consume it, you watch Premier League football these days, you have about 3 different subscriptions.
Yeah.
And it just shows that this model is kind of working. They've done brilliantly well, and that's 4 first-half tries for Dominic Young. The number of venues as well, there are 18 venues, they spread it all around the country, so everyone can see it. So rugby league's not particularly strong in the south of England, but there is a game at the Emirates quite soon, and you can go and watch it there. You don't have to go to Widnes or Warrington or whatever.
Yeah. Well, you're better off going to Widnes or Warrington.
I bought a car.
To be.
I bought a car from Halliwell Jones. This is my connection with rugby league, and Halliwell Jones sponsor Warrington Wolves. Yeah, interesting, eh?
Oh, yeah, fascinating.
Yes, we're gobsmacked.
It's about time you left, because you're causing upset in Langford Towers as well, because Ruth's been in touch.
Oh, goodness me.
Saying Eamon does wear Irish tweed. I buy it for him. How do you know?
Is that right?
Yeah.
Has she been in touch? Wow, it's incredible.
So she's clearly... What,
He told
why are you sniffing Eamon?
No, I'm not. I was going through his bathroom cupboard. I shouldn't have done it.
Oh, no, you shouldn't have done it. Sorry.
Are you going to join us a bit later for some pumpkins?
Yes, I'm going to cut up some pumpkins. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm very good at it. If any pumpkins left over, I'll take it and make a soup.
Oh, yes. We've got an expert at pumpkin carving coming on a bit later on in the programme. So
what he's going to do.
We'll all have a go.
We will have a go. Get stuck in. They've got much more to come for you, including all the papers in a couple of minutes.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christie's, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for the briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, the briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
7:39 morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
So, shall we take a look at today's newspaper front pages? The Sunday Times leads with a line from the climate czar, that's Alex Sharma, who says Rishi Sunak risks undermining Britain's position as a world leader if he does decide to abandon COP27.
The PM will launch a major offensive on crime, according to The Telegraph.
The Express lead is on the government-funded £250 million yacht that Boris Johnson hoped would signify Britain's global power. Well, it's now been axed by Rishi Sunak.
Well, let's see what editor of Spike magazine Tom Slater and anthropologist Mariana Hotter have picked for us this morning. Morning, you two, once again.
Morning.
Tom, let's start with Lettuce Liz hacked by Mad Vlad, should we? Which can only be a Daily Star headline. Daily Star headline.
It is. A gem of a story here. I should read the little nib on the front here because it's as puntastic as you'd imagine. It's the endive days. Wet Lettuce Liz Truss has had her phone hacked by Mad Vlad's Rusky spies, it's claimed. Is it just the tip of the iceberg? So still...
Very good. They are lettuce crazy, aren't they?
We should say this is obviously a write-up of the Mail on Sundays. Big exposés we've been talking about a bit already this morning, with some quite shocking revelations about when Liz Truss was Foreign Secretary, her phone being hacked by, they're not sure who, but a lot of the signs seem to indicate Russia or potentially another kind of hostile foreign state. And just the details of it are so shocking that, as you were saying earlier, Anne, that the phone is essentially locked in a safe because it's so compromised. About a year's worth of messages were downloaded, private conversations between...
Why don't they just take a hammer to it? Why are they keeping it in the safe? Why don't they just chuck it in
Well, I don't know.
roll the car over it or something?
I presume the minute you activate it, it could send out more messages and all of those private messages, apparently, between herself and Kwasi Kwarteng about Boris Johnson.
Which it's interesting as well because, as the story points out, so much of, as with many businesses and institutions, government is also run on WhatsApp in large part these days. And it seems like even quite high-ranking members of government need to be told that you shouldn't really be doing that because
WhatsApp, which is owned by Facebook.
But which is encrypted end-to-end.
Well, it is, but there are a lot
clearly
of...
there are hackers.
But I think if you've hacked the phone, then maybe you get round the encryption of the message because actually you've got access to the device itself. But I think there's not a suggestion that Liz Truss did anything wrong in order to have her phone. Like, it wasn't that she was, breaching protocols or anything like that.
No, it was just her private phone.
And that she was terrified that it would totally derail and totally change the shape of the leadership contest if this came out. So that's why there was no press reporting allowed on it, which has just obviously been lifted, and that's why we're talking about it.
We've only just found out about it, but they've known it for quite some time, haven't they, during the summer?
At least they found out, I guess.
Quite how they found out, I don't know. How do you know if your phone... Hello? You wonder how...
Oh, don't talk to it.
No,
absolutely. Keep it silent.
Honestly, you do wonder, don't you? Let's have a look, Marianne, at the Times, should we? Looking at the Home Secretary.
So speaking of people breaching protocols and security rules. Liz Truss didn't do anything wrong, but her phone was hacked. Suella Braverman's done all the things wrong and obviously got her job back.
She's done a couple of things wrong, as far as we know.
Well, sharing sensitive information with an MP and his wife randomly, accidentally CCing the wrong email address, which is how it came to light. Yeah. Apparently saying Liz Truss was writing a statement describing, the situation and had described the Suella Braverman's actions as an honest mistake. And the Ethics Committee, who review government... So Liz Truss's own team, the Conservative Party, went, you can't really say that because it wasn't an honest... We don't believe it was an honest mistake.
It was certainly
intentional.
Intentional?
Intentional to send the email to people you shouldn't have sent.
I suppose it's a degree.
Yeah, you did it on purpose.
Careless or intentional or negligent. It was probably
negligent. Well, why are you sharing information that you know is confidential, that shouldn't be shared with, random members of the public, effectively?
It was apparently
and you do it anyway. You're the Home
Her
Secretary.
mobile, her private phone, rather than her office phone.
Why is she sending it to someone's wife?
I don't know.
I mean, whoever's phone, whatever email... She used her private email address. Doesn't matter.
No, it's...
But there are degrees to this thing, I suppose. I thought it was interesting...
Not really. When you're the Home Secretary.
When it first happened, everyone was like, that can't be the reason she's resigned. Everyone was saying, this is a minor breach, this is obviously about politics, this is obviously about the comments she'd made and how that reflected badly on the government and whatever. Then as soon as it's over the hump, it's like, oh, but she broke these rules, these cast-iron rules, all the rest of it. It's difficult to kind of work out to what degree.
Two women had apparently had a 2-hour row just before, and you can imagine her coming steaming out of a row, getting hold of the mobile, and actually picking up the wrong phone and sending it to the wrong person because she was so angry.
Well, this story is chapter number 17 of this fiasco. So she's apparently been accused of failing to act on legal advice from the government. Again, her own government. This isn't kind of, the opposition calling it out or anything like that. So 3 weeks ago, she was advised that people who are claiming asylum and are currently being held in a place called Manston in Kent, which I'm sure your viewers might be familiar with now. You've talked about it. So there's currently 2,600 people being kept there, including families, small children. It's only designed for 1,000 people, and the people there are supposed to be there for up to 24 hours before they then get sent on to more long-term accommodation while their claims are being processed. So far, people have been there for more than a month. And this is quite clearly illegal, and the advice that she was given was that there would likely be a judicial review. The people currently there will get asylum a claim accepted, so they'll become officially refugees, as it were. And you could launch a class action against the government because it's currently illegal detention, which would cost us taxpayers millions of pounds.
Such a mess.
And so the thing is, whatever your attitude to the situation is, we can't have our government officials acting in such a way that makes us, likely to be sued for millions of pounds, let alone the human cost of keeping people in such terrible conditions illegally.
Well, I'll tell you what...
She ignored it. She hadn't done anything.
Well, after all of that, Tom,
she's ignored it.
You can imagine poor Mrs Braverman could probably do with a large bottle of wine every night to calm her down, which is what apparently the Prime Minister had as her rider.
Yes.
I've never had a rider.
No, I think we should have a rider, yeah.
Negotiate one next time it comes around. But yes, so this is Liz Truss's rider while she was Prime Minister. Some quite interesting specific things, a bottle of wine each night, as you were suggesting, but also had a favouring for double espressos, but would only like them served in a flat white-sized cup for reasons that aren't altogether obvious. Maybe, easier to carry or something. And also just quite specific requests in relation to food. So no pre-made or plastic-packed sandwiches. Everything had to be freshly made, and absolutely no mayonnaise on anything ever.
Oh.
Was the edict that went down. So this is all part of the biography or kind of political.
That's not the greatest diet for anyone in a stressful job, is it?
Sauvignon Blanc.
Lots of espressos in the morning, bottle of wine at night.
And sandwiches.
And sandwiches, yeah. And if no mayonnaise, then she's missing out on the greatest tastes there is.
It does make you think what your rider would be if you were...
If you were Prime Minister.
I think no PM's got riders.
Apparently so.
There you go.
Well, you can imagine anyone going into a high office like that, having a word with their private secretaries and saying, look, if you really want to take care of me, this is how to do it.
I'm going to demand riders now.
What are you going to have?
I don't know.
So rider, but you might need to explain to viewers what riders are.
So they were like terms and conditions.
Yes, it's Hollywood stars always had riders.
Oh, they do.
Like, you only have white M&Ms in a bowl and you need 4 puppies or something.
They used to do it on Top of the Pops when the big stars came on Top of the Pops, and they said, my dressing room needs to be pink.
What?
You'd have to redecorate the whole dressing room.
No.
Well, that's,
That was said about me when in my early days. Yeah, that I had to have a pink dressing room, which I did have, but I certainly hadn't asked for it. And that I always wanted my cups of coffee with a doily, a paper doily. As if I would be a paper doily person.
I can imagine that.
There was clearly a bit of briefing against me to the press, the idea that I insisted on my coffee on a doily.
Oh, right.
But a rider is good fun. Yeah, you know you've made it when you are allowed to have a rider. So I think we should definitely think of one.
A dressing room would be nice.
A dressing room would be nice.
If I come in like this, I don't think...
A packet of crisps or something for breakfast would be fun.
You've had a McDonald's this morning.
I did. I had a cheesy thingy, which tastes of plastic. It tastes of plastic, but I have to say it, 6 o'clock in the morning, it's wonderful. Manna from heaven.
Yeah. Let's finish off with biscuits, actually, which would be very... Oh, now, biscuits as a rider. That would be nice. I like those plastic wafers, those pink wafery things.
Oh, them.
Well, they're just called lady.
I think they're just called wafers.
Are they?
Yeah.
I don't know. I used to love them as a kid, or anything with coconut in it.
I like coconut. Yeah. Oh, this is a good one for anyone watching. Then GBNews at gbnews.uk. If you could have a rider, what would it be?
What would it be?
Oh, I thought you meant a good one, as in, please send us pink wafer biscuits.
Oh no, yes, please do. So, what's the Star saying about biscuits?
We're all familiar, we're all aware of the chaos on the railways because employees are striking. The engineers at Fox's biscuit factory are striking over pay deals. And so there's a risk that our festive biscuits won't be able to be delivered in the enormous quantities that we require them to be.
So these are your biscuits?
Yeah, these are those like lovely Christmas... Oh no, you're so worried, bless you. So... yeah, it's really bad. Basically...
You've got like a jammy dodger in there.
Yeah, the crunch, the ginger crunch. Foxes also make, I think, wagon wheels, Viscount biscuits.
Oh, a Viscount. Now, orange or mint?
Viscount biscuit?
Don't you ever have a Viscount biscuit?
Yeah, it's kind of like a digestive-y biscuit with the whole thing's covered in like a sweet minty cream and then entirely encased, enrobed, if you will.
Enrobed.
Yes, and then foil. And then like that beautiful bright coloured foil that you can like make little shapes out.
Mint Viscount, I think, for me.
Mint Viscount. Orange
the tins are lovely, but they're full of biscuits you'd never buy normally.
Yeah, sort of combinations of flavours you never would.
Well, that's Christmas though, isn't it? You've got tins of things that you're never going to eat. So basically, to do the deal with the engineers and give them a pay rise that would be in line with inflation rather than a real terms pay cut, it would cost 140 grand. And you go, oh, that's quite a lot of money, except when you realise that Fox's Biscuits made £11 million in profit last year.
Oh, yeah.
So they can afford it.
I'm sorry, you've got social and corporate responsibility for our biscuits.
Keep the biscuits coming.
Pay the engineers, keep the biscuits coming.
Got to keep the biscuits.
There you go. So GB News is on the side of...
biscuit
Foxes
eaters everywhere.
Biscuit eaters and biscuit engineers everywhere.
Those biscuits are lovely.
I believe we are all talking about Christmas as well.
Oh, we're getting there, aren't we?
We really
look, thanks you two. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. In the meantime, let's talk properties, should we?
Well, yes, because the mortgage rates have been falling at the fastest rate since last month's mini-budget.
Some banks have cut the cost of fixed mortgage deals by more than 0.5 percentage point this week. The cheapest fixed deal is now closer to 5% than 6%.
So joining us for more on this is property expert Richard Blanco. Good morning, Richard. Hello. We're trying to figure out where the good news is and where the bad news is on this. Because if you've already done a very hurried deal in the last couple of weeks, you might actually have ended up worse off. Am I right?
Well, yes, it's true. And in fact, if you had to remortgage or were buying a property in the last 3 or 4 weeks, and actually that was really bad luck, because we're now starting to believe that actually fixed rates have peaked. We were seeing kind of 2-year fixes over 6%, but it's looking like they're falling now to between 5 and 6%. And if you can hold off a bit longer, a lot of commentators think that, you know, we're likely to see 2-year fixes at between 4 and 5%. That's even before bank base rate peaks, which we're expecting next summer. So yes, bad luck if you've taken out a fix in the last few weeks.
Yeah, but good news moving forward. There's always some people get caught out. It's the way of things, isn't it? But moving forward, if we're going to see some sort of... it is light at the end of the tunnel with all of this, isn't it? Especially for those people who have just been hanging on, if they can just wait a little bit longer.
I agree, yes, it's good news. I mean, it's incredible watching swap rates, which is what 2-year and 5-year fixes are based on. They have actually dropped by around about a percentage point since that crazy mini budget on the 23rd of September. So the kind of Rishi Sunak and Jeremy Hunt effect has really brought rates down. But of course, there are always variable rates or tracker rates. So if you're comfortable to kind of go onto a variable rate, then that might be the way forward. And in fact, some commentators think that bank base rate is not going to peak at kind of 5.25% next summer, that actually it will peak at closer to 4% now. So it could be good news for all of us.
I was just thinking, actually, if you have signed a deal, which at the moment now doesn't look a very good deal, you've probably still got a bit of wriggling room to get out of it, haven't you? A 14-day period or something like that?
You might well have, actually. I mean, if you've signed your offer and returned it, then it's going to be tricky to get out of it, and you probably can't. But if you've, if you're processing your mortgage at the moment on a particular product, then usually you can go back to the lender and say, actually, I'd like to change onto a different product now, if that's okay. And most lenders would allow you to do that.
Yeah, oh well, fingers crossed if you're in that position. Richard, good to see you, as always. Thanks very much indeed. Don't go anywhere. We've got all your top stories coming up after a look at the weather. We're looking ahead to the weather, and the UK is going to be showery in the west this morning, brighter elsewhere, rain in the far southeast. Here are the details.
By midday, the southwest of England will see a mix of sunshine and scattered showers. The showers locally perhaps heavy and being blown through on a brisk southwesterly wind.
Thicker cloud likely across southeastern parts of England. Here the showers will be merging, so that's going to give some longer spells of rain.
Some heavy and quite blustery showers will affect Wales, although in the brighter spells, temperatures could read a mild 16 Celsius.
Now, most parts of the Midlands should just about escape any showers. There'll be some bright or sunny spells developing at times. Going to be quite mild for late October, although there will be a bit of a breeze.
A generally fine weather will extend to the northeast of England as well, with showers confined to the Pennine areas. In shelter from the wind, it shouldn't feel too bad, thanks to some sunshine.
Let's head to Scotland, where the sun will be more reluctant to break through across southern parts, though quite a few showers are likely, some of which will be on the heavy side.
And a good scattering of showers will affect Northern Ireland as well, although most of these should be light and they should feed through quite quickly in the wind.
So during the afternoon and evening, showers gradually easing, some good cloud breaks developing, though it will be breezy. And that's your weather this Sunday.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week. I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Are authorities, are communities doing all they can to combat violent crime? With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akue, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today.
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Every Saturday at 2 o'clock, join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain. I'm not afraid to give you a platform and say it how it is.
Come on, make the case. Something like this is very, very important to people.
And we're always up for a laugh on this show.
God, honestly, you'd think there were no problems in the world.
Real Britain, every Saturday on GB News.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister is warned that spending cuts could take us back to the austerity of 12 years ago.
Good morning. It's just coming up to 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 30th of October. Yes, it is 8 o'clock. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
We're live across the whole of the UK. We're on your TV, on your radio and online. So wherever you are, hopefully still in bed, then you can listen to us and take us with you as you move around the house, or even if you head out today.
So ahead of their autumn budget, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have been told that plans to cut spending to fill a £50 billion black hole could take us back to the times of austerity.
What next for Northern Ireland? Another Assembly election looms, yet a date has yet to be decided. We'll bring you all the latest updates.
And it's almost Halloween. Costumes at the ready, spooky snacks prepped, pumpkins all carved, dogs all dressed up.
If you need any inspiration, this is one I made last night.
It's good,
Pumpkin,
isn't it?
That is. I'm impressed even myself.
This one I made earlier.
Yes. If that doesn't get you in the mood, then we've got an expert on, this fella here, to show us how to do it properly.
And if you look carefully at that pumpkin, I missed it earlier, that is Will's and Kate on their wedding day.
It's nice, isn't it?
It is brilliant.
If you've been busy carving away, send us yours. We'd love to see the pictures. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
And don't forget, if you are just waking up and coming to, it is 8 o'clock because the clocks went forward, back. They went back last night, didn't they?
Spring forward, fall back.
That's it, yes.
Yeah.
And it is the
Which is lovely because we got an extra hour in bed.
Oh, it was brilliant, except I kept waking up to check whether my phone had flipped forward an hour. Because I thought it was going to at midnight and it didn't. I thought it would at 1 o'clock, it didn't. It does it at 2 in the morning.
2.
Always on a Sunday, so that most people won't be too traumatised by turning up to work late.
Yes, there you go. Now, as the Prime Minister, is preparing for his autumn budget, no doubt looking at his watch, thinking that the days are ticking by rather quickly. A think tank has warned that a freeze on public spending could see some services return to levels seen in the era of austerity.
The warning comes, of course, as Rishi Sunak and his Chancellor Jeremy Hunt are considering up to £50 billion worth of spending cuts and tax hikes in an effort to fix everything.
Well, let's talk to someone who knows the ins and outs of all of this. Former Special Advisor to Michael Gove, Charlie Rowley. Good to see you.
Hi.
Look, this is incredibly tough, all of this. I mean, we keep saying, we've said all week, what an inbox to be faced with when you move into number 10. However, there does, I think, there's been a sort of sense of calm, at least. It feels like there is at last a hand on the rudder. What's your assessment of how this week's gone?
I think that's right, and I think a calm has descended across, hopefully, the country, whether you are a supporter of the Conservatives, whether you're a supporter of the government, whether you're a supporter of Rishi. I think people are pleased that there's a Prime Minister that is in place, someone that has been the Chancellor in quick succession and can get on and deal with the difficult decisions that have had to be that have got to be taken. I think there was a long period where the government was obviously in a state of flux under Liz Truss's sort of administration, but I think now we can get back to being boring.
In fact, it was your old boss, wasn't it, Michael Gove, who said boring is back. But you wouldn't think so if you read the newspapers. They're always looking for new angles, and of course they're talking about Liz Truss's phone being hacked and things like that. But in amongst all this calm, there is still this idea that there is this still willingness to knock whoever's in. And at the moment, he is getting it, isn't he? He's being attacked for his wealth. He's being attacked for perhaps taking donations from companies that are investing in fossil fuels, for instance, and oil.
Not going to COP.
And not going to COP. And is that the reason he's not going to COP? So we're still getting at him.
I think so, and that's inevitable, I think, in politics, particularly when you're at the very top. But I think, there are decisions that, the media and the opposition will have to make. How do you, how do Labour try and maintain their lead in the polls? How do they, attack politically Rishi? And as you say, it's about his wealth and his shoes and maybe the suits that he wears. But I think if you attack somebody's wealth, ultimately as a political tactic, it's a bit cheap because ultimately you don't choose what your parents are, what wealth you're born into, and you don't choose who you love if you marry into wealth. So as a party that wants to be open, innovative, pro-business, it has to work out itself whose side is it on, who's it supporting.
What do you make of the messaging coming out of number 10, though? Because it is pretty negative at the moment. Interestingly, Stuart's been in touch, says we're a grown-up nation and don't think the information coming from number 10 is too negative. I guess he just means we need realism at the moment in all of this. I mean, is it all about expectation management ahead of November the 17th?
I think so. I think a previous guest that you had on that's talking about the property markets, and there seems to be this current reassurance between the Hunt and the Rishi factor. And I think that's right. And, I think that's reflected in the polls. The Conservative Party seems to be clawing back day by day. I mean, he's only been in the job for 4 or 5 days. So let's see what happens in the next 4 or 5 weeks, the 4 or 5 months, and then beyond. So I think there is that reassurance. But yes, there has to be that element of expectation management. The way in which Rishi went into number 10, we saw there wasn't the usual sort of applause, the clap of everybody surrounding him, because he wanted to set the tone for the country that this is a very, very serious moment, and he's going to take this opportunity to level with the public, to say, look, mistakes have been made over the last 2 months. We've probably got to go further than what we might have done because of the way the mini-budget didn't instill confidence in the market. So this is a really, really serious moment. We've all got to do our bit, and it is setting that expectation management, as you say, Steve.
I mean, we were talking about the stress of being inside number 10 at the moment, of being the Prime Minister, and it must be incredibly stressful because, as we know, the Prime Minister at the moment has various different audiences he has to appeal to. How do you think he's going down at the moment with the Tory bigwigs, the people who really hold the power within the Conservative Party?
Well, I think, as I say, I think everybody was pleased that we didn't have a leadership election that would be going on until Friday. So, we could have had another week of the psychodrama of the infighting and the public sort of disputes between two candidates. So I think having somebody that was able to command the confidence of its Conservative backbenchers installed in quick succession was a good thing. I think, obviously, there is a lot of weight on his shoulders because being a former Chancellor and when it is the economy that is the number one issue, there is that expectation that he will come in and deliver, and as I say, regain that momentum in the polls and see the Conservatives progress and do better than what it currently has been.
Do you think it's a sign of tensions, though, already between... And I'm not trying to cause trouble. It's just you do wonder, though, the fact that the autumn statement has been put back from tomorrow, which was meant to be till November the 17th. Is that a sense that him and Jeremy Hunt actually aren't necessarily agreeing on how to move this forward?
I don't think so. I think the irony is that I think the 17th of November was the original date that Kwasi Kwarteng wanted, but because of the the way in which the mini budget sort of appeared and its fallout, they've had to move that. They had to move that forward to the 31st to try and instill that bit of confidence. So moving it back, I think, is the right thing to do because it just allows the Chancellor and the Prime Minister to really understand the figures, get under the car bonnet to see in every sort of sector in public life what we can do, where savings might need to be made, or where actually, as a compassionate Conservative government, that's the language that's coming out from Number 10, where actually you can go as far as you possibly can to protect the most vulnerable and the services that you need to. But I think having that time to consider all these factors and deliver that on the 17th of November is the right thing.
Does that play into Rishi's hands, the compassionate side of it? Look, we've had a lot of views in this morning, and we always do when it comes to furlough and things like this. And Michael said the black hole is all down to the much too generous furlough scheme. Right, I mean, there are arguments, pro and cons over furlough and how it was done. However, for a lot of people, it was an absolute lifeline, and people who aren't Conservative voters. Does that then put Rishi in a better light? Does he seem like a more compassionate Conservative from the perspective of people who don't really vote Conservative?
I think that's totally right, and I think. Some of the conversations that we're having within the Conservative Party, there were people that, weren't particularly happy with that approach and thought it was too much state intervention. And, that's why Liz was going for growth and wanted tax cuts immediately to move away from the state having too much of a say. Now, obviously, that spooked the markets and, obviously wasn't what the country asked or wanted or needed, frankly. So going back to someone that, as you say, has intervened in the past, that supported jobs and wages through furlough, doing the same again where it's needed, helping the most vulnerable, where we're seeing a cost of living crisis, when you're seeing daily goods on the rise, people protecting people's mortgages and pensions. I think that's why there's that confidence that's been temporarily reinstilled. So let's hope it's maintained.
I've been wondering all this time why so much of what comes out of Number 10 at the moment seems to be so negative. It's all about what he's not going to have. Every time he opens his mouth, it seems to me, he's warning us that things are going to be tough and he's got to make tough decisions. Do you think that the budget is going to be even tougher? We're being sort of warmed up for really bad news.
I'm not entirely sure. I think, obviously, given the situation that we've come from, you have to be in a position where you're looking as though you're in control, and because obviously the last administration wasn't necessarily, it didn't appear that they were in total control.
Diplomatic.
Well, the optics were bad, weren't they? That's for sure.
So I think being able to regain that confidence within the public and in the financial services sector, you've got to go a bit further to say that things might be looking difficult. They will be difficult, and we've all got to recognise that, but we've all got to find ways to make it work. And so having a leader that can level with the public, deliver on that outcome, I think is going to be the way forward.
He's taken on a new director of communications.
Oh, yes, he has.
He? A lady from ITV who used to work at Sky.
So it's Amber de Botton.
Yeah.
I can't speak this morning. Amber de Botton, who, yes, used to work
apparently
down
a very experienced person. Yeah. If I were her, I would be saying, OK, if you're going to go for compassionate Conservatism, you've got to spell out the compassion bit because people might not get it. Would you agree?
I do, and I think you've got to, the proof's in the pudding, and it's not just words, you've got to see what the actions that the government take forward, and so whether that's, increasing benefits in line with inflation, not wages, which is obviously the high amount, to signal that you are protecting the most vulnerable in society, those on the lowest incomes, would be a step in the right direction.
When are you standing for office, Charlie? No, seriously, is it in your game plan at some point?
Well, I was a candidate in 2019. I was the Conservative candidate in Halton, which is just outside Liverpool.
Oh, wow.
So I can't think why I didn't win. But
was it tough? Is it really tough business going in for the first time like that?
It was, but it was enjoyable. And politics is always about meeting people. That's what it's always about. And the people of Halton weren't shy in coming forward with their views. It's thoroughly enjoyable. But
so if you try it once, usually you try it again, don't you? And you maybe be given a slightly more hopeful seat.
Well, but
of course we don't know when the next general election is.
We don't, but it would mean that I would have to stop coming on and talking to you in the mornings.
Not necessarily. Not necessarily. No. I tell you what, I can see you in high office one day. Don't forget where you started.
Well,
Charlie, thanks very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Thank you indeed, absolutely. And do get in touch with us with your views as well. Give us an email. We'd love to know your views. It's gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah, actually, on the whole COP thing, Kevin says, why doesn't Rishi declare that he's sending a representative to COP, as pressing issues at home prevents him from attending himself?
That's all he has to do, you know.
Well, we are doing that.
Alok Sharma's going, but he's not even a cabinet minister anymore.
He's president of COP.
Yeah, I know, but he isn't a cabinet minister anymore. I think the king should go.
No. No, I'm quite anti-COP.
And who you are?
I just don't think it does anything.
Actually, this is a good one, though. Aslim says, there is no doubt a correlation between poverty and CO2 emissions. India, China and Brazil are prime examples. By sorting out the UK economy and reversing the cost of living, people will have the extra money to spend on their own solar panels, wind turbines, insulation, etc.
Well,
that's a neat thought.
Well, it's true. I mean, it's a fair point. I'd love to get solar panels and
Me
all
too,
that up.
I would. So you are a little bit green, see?
Well, no, a bit green. I'm not anti-green. I just think it's got to, you've got to see the benefit yourself out of it, haven't you?
OK, Billy says, let's be honest, planet Earth has had it. People are selfish and care about nothing but themselves.
That's it. Glass is always half full there,
Oh,
Billy.
absolutely. And Pauline says here, Boris would be the ideal person to speak for Britain at COP27. When he speaks, people listen.
Oh, it's true. You're not wrong. Keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.uk. And at 13 minutes past 8, let's bring you up to date with some of the other stories this morning.
Russia has suspended a UN-brokered Black Sea grain deal with Ukraine after an alleged Ukrainian drone attack on its fleet in Crimea. The US President Joe Biden called the move purely outrageous and said it would increase starvation. Meanwhile, the United Nations has now resumed contacts with Russian authorities.
South Korea's president has declared a period of national mourning following a deadly stampede last night. At least 151 people were killed and 82 injured in Seoul. The Prime Minister here has tweeted saying all our thoughts are with South Koreans at this very distressing time.
And the government has been urged to launch an urgent inquiry or investigation following reports that Liz Truss's phone was hacked. The Daily Mail have revealed today, the Sunday Mail, that the former Prime Minister's phone was actually hacked by Russian agents. And the breach was supposedly discovered during the summer Tory leadership campaign when Ms Truss was Foreign Secretary.
And the Princess of Wales has urged those suffering with an addiction not to let shame hold them back from getting help. Catherine made the comments on a video link on the first day of Addiction Awareness Week. She's the patron of the addiction recovery charity Forward Trust.
8:14. Octopus Energy has announced that it's buying rival energy company Bulb following their collapse last year. The deal, which is worth in excess of £100 million, will now see 1.5 million customers transferred across to the new supplier, to Octopus. The government has promised that consumers won't see any change or disruption to their energy supply, and existing credit will also be carried across.
Well, what's that going to mean for the markets? Let's talk to senior consulting market strategist Mike Ingram. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
Are you a bit surprised? I'm a little bit surprised that a deal of this level has been made. I'm surprised it's as been as expensive as it has been for this failed company.
Well, we don't actually know how expensive it is, because at the time that Bulb went into administration, which was November last year, supposedly the bill for the bankruptcy effectively was mooted to be in the region of £2 billion.
Wow.
So, you know, the number that you quoted just a moment ago, 100 million, and there are press reports that it's 100 to 200 million that Octopus have actually stumped up to take on these customers. I suspect is probably the tip of the iceberg. And, you know, I've looked extensively in the, you know, the government announcements, press reports from Octopus Energy itself. And it's pretty unclear who's paying what. I mean, it seems to be reasonably clear, or at least it's inferred by what I'm reading, that the government effectively has lent Octopus money to allow them to take on these customers, and this is going to be repaid over a period of time. And this is where this talk of profit sharing between Octopus Energy and the government seems to be kicking in. But the details around that, who knows?
Because we wondered whether they stopped up the money, didn't we?
Well, we're coming to the end of the era of the magic money tree. I'm sure it's coming from somewhere.
Why would the government lend them money to do this?
Well, I mean, these customers have to be serviced. There's 1.5 million customers. They have to have a supplier. And in fairness, I mean, you know, this company, Bulb, went into administration 11 months ago, and I think the vast majority of their customers, the previous customers, I guess, haven't really noticed any difference. I mean, and then the Ofgem advice is, you know, if your supplier goes bust, and let's be honest, plenty of those have gone bust. I think 29 or 30 have gone bust over the last year or so. Their advice is, you know, sit tight, don't switch, your money's safe, you'll still get energy.
Because that's the problem, you can't switch at that stage, can you? Because you've obviously got money, if you pay by direct debit or what have you, you've sort of got money in the bank, as it were, with them.
I think it's administratively complicated if you start to do that, which is why Ofgem are giving the advice that it is.
Are we heading towards a time when actually there's been, as I say, a lot of small companies that have gone bust for all of this? You can see where competition is meant to drive the market, but perhaps we all need the reliance
of 4 or 5
of
big suppliers.
ones.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I mean, it's a facade of competition, but actually when push comes to shove, particularly when the market has received this enormous shock that it has over the last 12 months, which I would add, I mean, these were companies which were going bust nearly a year ago, prior to Russia-Ukraine blowing up. So, you know, let's not say it's all Putin's fault. This is a design fault in the way that the industry has been regulated. And because simply what happened was you had this massive spike in the wholesale price of, you know, gas, for instance, tends to drive energy prices overall. And these companies were effectively forced to sell gas at a loss. And of course, most of these companies, limited financial resources, folded. Now, to your immediate point, where did these companies, you know, who got the customers of the companies which folded? Well, it's the usual suspects, people like British Gas. So much for competition, really.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't even heard of Bulb, but I presume there are lots of other companies that I've never heard of. There, as you say, 20 or 30 failing. Yeah. So how many? Octopus have done quite well to survive so well, then.
They have been a major beneficiary of you know, what looks to be an energy market consolidation. But as I said, I mean, you know, what are the economics in and around that? I mean, you know, if I were to, you know, I suppose the most relaxed I could be about it is say, well, hang on, the government's probably lending Octopus some money, it's going to get repaid over a period of time. But, I mean, ultimately, where is this going to end up? The government will put a levy on the industry as a whole, which is what not normally happens when a company fails. There's a sort of, like a reserve fund. But ultimately, what happens in that situation is everybody in the industry passes that levy onto the customers. So whichever way you look at, the taxpayer ends up paying.
Is in an odd situation, isn't it? Because they go on about their green credentials, and you get a lot of people. Well, it's all meant to be, you know, supposedly, you know, renewable energies. And then you get a lot of people who email us and say, well, in that case, why aren't our bills cheaper? Now, we know that's the structure, the charging structure. It means that they all have to be levied up to the top level to be equivalent to the gas and all the rest of it.
Pretty much.
That needs to be looked at, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's interesting to note that this, where you know, the government's scrambling to find tax revenue, that, you know, the should we say, the traditional energy companies, you know, the Shells and the BPs of this world, are in the crosshairs, and they're saying, well, we need to have yet another windfall tax, and they've already had one this year. And it's debatable how much money is actually going to be raised by these measures. But about 70% of the renewables companies in the UK are on pre-2015 type deals, which means they effectively get a free ride on the higher levels of, shall we say, conventional fuels, and they are making enormous profits. So one thing I'll just put out there is, you know, it's quite possible that we'll see further windfall taxes on the Shells, the BPs of this world. But what would be quite interesting to see, because it is an untapped pot of tax revenue for the Exchequer is whether they extend this to some of the renewables companies which are really, minting it at this point in time. But, you can imagine what the optics of that might look like. You're going to have people, you don't even have to be an eco-fanatic in order to think, well, you're going to have people screaming down the house on this. But it would level the playing field to some extent, and it would potentially raise quite a bit of money.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's definitely something to look at, isn't it? Mike, really good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed. You see, all this stuff goes on under the surface.
Yes.
You don't realise what's happening.
Yeah, it's nice to find out occasionally what is really happening under the surface, as you say. It's Halloween tomorrow. Are you carving your pumpkins yet? A bit later on in the programme, we're going to be talking to a pumpkin carving expert. And he's going to show us exactly how to do it. But you have been sending in your wonderful pumpkin creations. I think the first one comes from Mark, is it?
Wow. Wow.
That's a dragon on the side of a pumpkin.
It's very artistic.
It is a dragon, isn't it?
I think so.
I think it's a dragon.
Either that or a shrimp.
Well, exactly. It could be either almost, but it's really cool.
Very cool.
Very good.
Linda says our grandchildren, Amelia, Will and Phoebe, carved these pumpkins whilst visiting earlier in the week. If you look closely, you'll see Will is a Ronaldo fan and carved the football with the CR7 reflected on the conservatory window behind.
Oh, yes. Well done.
Very nice too.
That's lovely. They're getting smelly yet. That's what I wonder, if you leave them too long. Wendy says, no Instagram perfection here, just two very happy grandchildren, a tired and proud granny, and a kitchen that looks like a tornado has hit it.
Oh, they're fantastic.
But those are very good pumpkins. Well done.
I love those. Love those. Angie says, this is my cat.
Oh, that's a good idea. Love it.
Very good.
Is that two carrots sticking out the top as ears?
Be.
I think so.
That's very
really
good.
Cool.
Like that a lot.
Very nice. And finally, Eileen in Stanford has sent this one.
Ooh.
She says, something different made by my grandchildren, William, Megan and Tom.
Oh, that's nice.
Is that a pumpkin?
I think it's one of those, you do
long
get
green
sort of
one.
different pumpkin. I don't know why you get different coloured pumpkins.
Well,
I like that.
Who knows?
I like that a lot.
But you're very
nice
creative
too.
lot. Thank you so much. And we'd love to see. We've got another couple of hours yet, so do keep those pictures coming in of any pumpkin creations you've got going at the moment. GBViews at gbnews.uk. We've got lots more to come, including some really interesting showbiz news. And if you're a fan of Friends, like what I am, Matthew Perry's come out with his new book, doing interviews all over the place. It's very, very raw, and it tells us all about the struggles he's had over the years and continues to have, I think. We'll be talking about him and other show business stories coming up.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England,
Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio and online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debate, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh, my goodness. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Well, you're all a bit biscuit-tastic this morning at 8:27. Lawrence in Hollingworth says you can't beat a chocolate hobnob with a layer of caramel in it.
Sam says, why not make your own? They're the nicest present to give or treat yourself at Christmas, and so easy.
And if you can do it well, James says, oh, James, I cut out all sugars 5 years ago. No cake, biscuits, buns, crisps, sweets. OK, it's a bit bland, but it really impresses my GP. But you must have had your reasons for doing it, James. No doubt you're very healthy.
It probably really does impress your GP, yeah.
But I couldn't quite do that.
OK, here's one about COP27. Ted in Wales says, what's the wailing about about climate change? If the UK temperature rises 2.5 degrees, then we can all turn our heating thermostat down 2.5 degrees. And look at what that will save in fuel use and carbon footprint. Yeah, it's a little more complicated than that.
Yes, but John says if the King went to COP27, I'd change from being a loyal monarchist to being a Republican. Everything about COP is political.
Yeah, everything about the world is political. Certainly looking after it.
Sort of with you a little bit there, John. Not saying it too loudly.
No.
Anyway, look, let's talk showbiz, should we? Friends. Who doesn't love Friends? No. Apparently all the youngsters are watching Friends now.
Oh, I'm surprised, really.
And I feel like saying to them...
It does keep going round and round again.
It never stops, does it, on some of these channels?
No, it's very, very good. I'm an absolute addict. I've been an addict for so long, I can tell you what the next line is in the dialogue. It's that bad, yeah.
Dear. Anyway, look, Matthew Perry. Chandler Bing has laid bare his struggles with addiction ahead of the release of his memoir.
Yeah, I mean, it's extraordinary. They've released little bits of the memoir and he's done one interview in the States so far and it is very raw. He was actually brought to the verge of tears during an interview with Diane Sawyer in which footage of him looking really emaciated was shown.
Well, let's talk to our showbiz reporter, Ellie Phillips, who's here. Good morning.
Good morning, guys.
We knew at the time something was going on.
Yes.
Because he went from being sort of an ordinary shape to becoming very thin, to becoming quite chunky and all that.
Yeah, and as you said, excerpts from this upcoming memoir, which was released in 2 days, actually have been released. And one of them has said previously that he himself can identify what abuse he was doing to himself at what time, according to his weight. So he said when he was very overweight on the show, he was drinking alcohol excessively, and that when he was really, really thin, he was taking pills. And actually, at the height of his addiction, he was on 55 painkillers a day.
It's Vicodin, isn't it? Vicodin. That's the really strong painkiller. It was opioid.
Yeah, which if anyone's not seen Dope Sick, I would really urge you to go and watch it. It's a show, an American show that really explains it inside out. It's a really good watch. Michael Keaton, fantastic. We don't know that much about it here because we don't have access to that level of painkiller for long term.
Over the counter.
Over the counter. But over in America, it's huge. And he is such an example, Matthew Perry, of how bad this can be. You know, he was hospitalised 4 years ago when his colon burst because of the abuse he'd done to himself. He was in a coma. So it really is extreme.
Yeah, didn't the doctors tell him he had a 2% chance of recovery?
Exactly. And so he's like, how have I even survived all this? So I think his memoir is going to help a lot of people, hopefully, to understand the early signs, how to get out of it, to acknowledge it, to get the help that you need. But like you said, he did this interview with Diane Sawyer on Good Morning America. He broke down in tears and she played a clip of him in 1997. So this was about 4 years after he joined Friends, and he was at his thinnest. He weighed about 126 pounds, and he's a 6 foot man. To put that in context, I'm 5'2". I'm a very small person. I weigh about that, and he's 6 foot. So you can imagine.
He did look. I mean, I remember those episodes. He looked painful.
But also, you've got to remember, as we all know, you look larger on screen than you do in real life. So in real life, it must have been really bad. And in this Diane Sawyer interview, you also said that Jennifer Aniston, who played Rachel in Friends, that she confronted him about his substance abuse. And at this point, it was one of the points she confronted him was alcohol, and he thought he'd hidden it well. And she said, "We can all smell it on you. We know something's wrong. We want to help you."
See, what makes me really sad about this, he's been clean for some time, hasn't he? But it says it's the health problems that he's now suffering as a result of stuff that was done decades ago.
Absolutely. I mean, he was hospitalised in 2000, I think it was, with pancreatitis, which comes from excessive alcohol abuse. And so it really has taken its toll on his body. But this all started, this wasn't someone who went out to a club and was like, let me do drugs. He was in a jet ski accident and was given Vicodin. This was in 1997. And that's what kicked off his addiction to opioids. But he himself has said, you know, he has an addictive personality. And so it was alcohol and the opioids that he dabbled between.
What the remarkable thing is, I mean, and if you read what he says, I mean, he was terribly, terribly addicted and often very, very ill. He was still functioning as an actor. I mean, he was still brilliant in Friends, wasn't he?
And he said categorically he'd never taken anything on set. You know, he turned up, he did his job properly, but I think at the back of his mind the whole time he was waiting to be able to go and do what he felt he needed to do to get through.
It's what you need to, because you heard about this. I remember all this with George Best and things when he passed away. There's all this talk about how many people in the UK are what they call functioning alcoholics. You think they're not an alcoholic because they're not having scotch for breakfast or whatever it may be, but actually functioning alcoholics, like functioning drug abusers like that. I mean, it's a very odd situation.
It is, and also I think, as anyone with an addiction will say, they never cured from it. It's something that you live with for your whole life. In fact, Matthew Perry first went into rehab back in 1997 for this, and then it took for him when his colon burst. At that point, he had a colostomy bag fitted for 9 months, and the hospital and the doctors said to him, when you next want to go and take another opioid, I think it's either this or, that means a colostomy bag. And it took that level of extremity for him to actually be able to kick it for, as long as he has done now.
He seems very unhappy still, though, doesn't he? I mean, you wonder why he's written the book, too. Does he need the money?
Possibly, but the thing is that he's been open about is that he said when he joined Friends back in 1994, he thought that was the best thing. And he was on this high for like 8 months. And very quickly he realised, actually, being famous and being successful in that way wasn't going to solve other problems that he had, and it wasn't a quick fix. And so, yes, you're right, he's openly said there are things that he's been very unhappy with in his
And
life.
he was in a very close relationship with Julia Roberts, which I never knew, actually, although she did appear in one episode, which was very funny. And he said he dumped her because he felt so insecure in the relationship because she was a movie star and he was only a TV star.
And we're like, but you're Chandler Bing, this is, to us, that's crazy. But also, he said, not just of that relationship, but of other relationships, it's always been him who's ended them and pushed people away because he was so scared of people realising the truth about him and how he really lives.
And then tell us what he says as well about when Julia Roberts, about 5 years later, got her Oscar and he watched her on television getting the Oscar. And do you remember what he said? He said he was in rehab at the time and he was shaking and shivering on the floor with other people shaking and shivering on the floor in total, basically drying out, actually. And he was in rehab and he watched her on the television getting her Oscar and realised how far apart their worlds had become. He was this hopeless addict on the floor and she was this glamorous star getting her Oscar.
And honestly, his career could have gone in that same way as well. We don't really... What's he done since Friends, really?
He's done quite a few things.
But nothing on that
huge.
scale, nothing where you'd be like with, those other stars, and you think... impacts your life in so many ways: the health, the career, the family, everything.
Yeah. Well, let's hope he's all getting it together, because he's all so fondly thought of.
Oh gosh, well,
Anyway.
yes, well,
He was my favourite character.
Well,
Yeah, well,
absolutely,
mine too,
and
actually.
a comic genius. I mean, the delivery
Just
was
the
absolutely incredible. All of them were very, very good. That's why it's lasted. It's amazing to see that it's still going on all television channels. I think it's still one of the most watched things ever on television ever.
And now we're cool again because we all know it
And
anyway.
it's very, very cool.
And you remember it first time round.
Yeah.
There you go. Ellie, thank you very much indeed. Don't go anywhere. We've got all the papers heading your way in a couple of minutes.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
Where would you like to go? Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
$8:39, very nearly 8:40 actually. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Very good morning to you.
Yes, indeed. And remember, the clocks have gone forward. So let's take a look
back.
Sorry.
They've gone back.
I'm completely confused, which is why I wanted to try and straighten it out for you. Yeah, because you're waking up on a Sunday morning, you don't know what hour it is. And what is it? It is 8:40.
Not 9:40.
20 to 9. That's right. Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
So
I've done that before.
Yes.
Years ago, but I
Totally wrong.
remember as kids, and we all turned up at church, and there's nobody there on a Sunday morning.
You were out early, or did you miss the service?
No, we were an hour early.
Oh gosh. Well, that's dedication for you.
I know.
The question is, did you stay until the service
Got an extra wafer.
But it wasn't pink.
No, it wasn't.
likes-
There were those pink wafers. Oh, are they made with cochineal? That's what I need to know now. I never thought of that. Because that's insects, isn't it?
It is the red colouring.
Anyway, let's have a look at the papers quickly. With editor of Spike magazine, Tom Slater, and anthropologist Marianne Hotter. Morning, you two.
Morning again.
Tom, to the Sunday Express, should we? What's this shock poll that they're talking about?
So it's showing the scale of the problem that Rishi Sunak has to get over in order to make the Tories even a viable contender for government next time around. So a third of voters, according to this poll, say that they are less likely to back the Conservatives at the next general election, with Sunak at the helm specifically. And also, as we've seen reported elsewhere recently, the amount of people who have just left, of 2019 voters who have left the Conservatives, essentially. So about nearly half of those who backed the Tories in 2019 are currently not backing the party. It's obviously very early days.
I was going to say, do these polls mean anything at this stage? Because we need to see where we are in 6 to 12 months, don't we?
I think that's right. I mean, I think the one number that they'll be most keen to see go down at the moment is just the amount of people who want a general election. It's currently about 64%. And you can understand that insofar as we've had just this kind of Tory musical chairs without actually any proper democratic mandate. One thing that from this poll, which is from Onward and JL Partners, which is interesting, which is that whilst the Tories have lost at the moment about 6.7 million voters, only a sliver of them, about 1.3 million, have gone to the Labour Party. So the vast majority are either undecided or have said they're just not going to vote next time around.
Yeah.
And so what we're looking at here when you see that commanding Labour lead is not that they've necessarily won back a lot of those voters or that there's been a lot of switching. It's that, in fact, you're seeing a lot of people who are kind of disaffected, moving away. And so, in a sense, there is still a fair bit to play for, even though
it's easier to win them back than pull them back from another party,
exactly.
Isn't it? Marianne, in the Sunday Times, microplastics.
Yeah, this is a bit of a radical one. Many of us know that air pollution is a problem. It's the kind of invisible killer. Not that long ago, a little girl who died of a terrible, terrible asthma attack was the first person to have air pollution listed on the causes of death. In the UK, that is. There's going to be a big report published next month about the impacts of the health impacts of air pollution by Sir Chris Whitty, who's the Chief Medical Officer. He of COVID fame, you know, but he was on our TVs every night. One of the things they've realised is that it's not actually just the particle of the carbon, like horrible carbon particles, for example, coming out of car exhausts or people's chimneys on factories or whatnot. It might actually be tiny pieces of microplastic which are held in the air that we breathe in.
So how are they getting into the air?
So one of the things is modern tyres on cars, all cars, including electric cars, where obviously there's no emissions. Modern tyres are mostly made of plastic, and when they're rolling along the road, they shed because, you know, your tyres get worn down, and some of that goes up into the air. So when you're walking along a busy road and you go, oh, this smells horrible, you're smelling the particulate matter. You don't even realise that you're breathing in the plastic, and that's where it ends up. For example, they found when they do autopsies and things, they find plastic in people's brains, and they've done assessments of placentas of, you know, people who've just given birth. They're newborn babies. The placenta has plastic in it. And obviously the impacts of that are potentially maybe the reason that there's all these increasing rates of cancer, all sorts of other health conditions, increases of dementia. They're trying to work out what the links are, but there's a massive concern that they are really bad for us and we didn't even realise. So you're kind of rolling out all these electric vehicles going, oh, this is the solution.
But the tyres are still the same.
The tyres are still the same, even if there's no, you know, fumes coming out of the exhaust.
I think we will look back one day and realise that plastic was an absolute evil, and we actually overdid it. We overdo plastic still now, don't we?
Well, I mean, there's so many... It's a wonder material. There's such an amazing... So many amazing things that plastic has enabled. But obviously, there's the kind of... You know, we're playing catch-up with the impacts of the technology. The other question is it the plastic or is it the chemicals that attach themselves to the plastic? So it's just plastic is the carrier. Either way, I've said to Tom in the break, I don't really know what the conclusion from this is, except that we should all go and live off-grid and stop living in towns and cities.
We should go to COP27 and try and do something about it.
Oh,
Get world leaders to do
go.
something about
Here
it.
we
Warm up the
go.
private jet.
When I was coming back on a jet aeroplane, so I mean that's the trouble with the
this
way
is
we
the
live.
trouble.
I was going to say when they brought the meals round, all the cutlery
so
was
much-
bamboo.
Oh.
The cutlery was bamboo, but the food was still in a plastic tray.
Angeli says, sorry, Anne, but I'm in agreement with Stephen on this. COP is more about talk. We rarely see any benefit.
Yeah, well, maybe the benefits will be long-term, but we need them.
Yeah.
Mike says COP27 is a waste of time until they stop all these little wars around the world. You've got to do everything there. We're part of a global planet, aren't we?
I'm not saying COP shouldn't happen. I just think, Rishi, should Rishi be going there? No.
You can send somebody important, like the King.
Can we have a look, Tom, at the Mail on Sunday? Hot water bottle sales. Because this intrigues me, because I've just bought a hot water bottle. I had one already, years old, and I bought one. It's long and thin.
Oh, I was wondering about those.
Yeah, so you can get into bed and lay it down your whole body.
That's a great idea.
There you go.
I just read a Which review of those, because Tom and I were talking about hot water bottle. It says that it's not any better than the cheap one you can get out of Superdrug.
Well,
yeah, but a long one, it's the shape.
It's the shape of it.
Put it right across your lap.
Push it and wrap it round your neck.
Yeah.
Or...
Are they more expensive than ordinary hot water?
Yeah, hugely more expensive.
No, 10 quid.
Oh, OK.
Well, that's not bad.
That's all right.
But apparently,
If I'd spend a lot of money on anything, call the other one.
there's a run on hot water bottles, though, apparently.
Yes.
We're going to be... there'll be a shortage.
And it'll probably be what it's like in the summer when you kind of forget to buy a fan or whatever and you can't find them anywhere, because apparently it's been soaring, so sales have tripled, according to John Lewis in particular, as people are trying to find these neat ways of avoiding putting the heating on. Martin Lewis from Money Saving Expert has estimated that kind of using a hot water bottle regularly is about a 50th of the cost as it would be to turn your heating on and so on and so forth. So it's one of those things which it's, even if it's becoming more and more of an essential as people are looking forward to those.
Great Christmas present.
Yeah,
Exactly.
great Christmas present.
And there's a whole range of options, which also the story lays out. So it talks about the £4.25 one you can get from Argos, but also some much more extravagant ones if you did want to treat someone this Christmas. You get a John Lewis one with a cover for about £25.
25
Yeah, but it's the cover.
Wait for this.
It gets worse. Harrods is offering a silk velvet hot water bottle with removable lavender sachet for £130. Which kind of defeats the object in terms of trying to sell it.
Exercise, then, isn't
The top one here, though, is from a designer called Anya Hindmarsh, who is selling one for £175 a piece.
175 quid for a hot water.
Yeah, but the money will be in the cover, won't it? It'll be in a posh cover.
And in
Diamond
her pocket.
encrusted.
Yeah.
But one of the really important pieces of advice is don't use that really old hot water bottle at the back of the airing cupboard that you haven't used for years and years, because the rubber degrades.
Yeah.
And then you might potentially end up with, basically 2 litres of boiling water, or like very hot water. So don't do that. Get a new one.
With instructions on the back, and mine says on this one it takes about 1.5 litres to fill it up, and it says do not use water above 40 degrees Celsius, and only fill it a quarter of the way up, which would then be a total waste of time.
Yeah.
So of course I ignore that.
Oh, so that's what they have to say for health and safety reasons, isn't it?
Yeah. You just fill it up with hot water.
I insist you must have a hot water bottle that's got a handle on it so you can hold it while you're pouring into it. Because you get some that you can only hold round the neck.
Oh, yeah.
And then you are... I always feel very vulnerable to pouring boiling water.
Well, I think you're not supposed to be pouring boiling water in. Maybe, warmer than body temperature, because otherwise what's the point of that? But not boiling water from the kettle.
Yeah, but that means the hot water is probably coming out of your tap, which means you're heating your water, which you're trying to...
Or just boil the kettle and then wait 5 minutes. Okay. Just don't do it when it's really hot. And then always squeeze the air out, because the air expands.
Well, you need to hold... Oh, there we go.
Go on, no, tell me.
It's important.
So if you hot water bottle, you hold it like that and fill it in.
Yeah.
And then when it starts to fill up, you lift it.
Yes.
And the air comes out the top, and then you bend it back down again.
You do it carefully so it doesn't...
And that stops it spitting out.
And do it over the sink as well. So if you hurt yourself at all with boiling water, you drop it, it goes in the sink.
Yeah. And also, once you put the top back on, shake it upside down.
Oh, yeah, check your bottle before you...
To get rid of the drips in the...
Well, to make sure it's not leaking.
See?
That you've done the top-up properly.
Yeah. Say, look, how's this for public service?
We are back to the 1950s. Yeah.
There you go.
Meanwhile, the price of a traditional roast has soared.
Yes.
So what are we going to cook for Sunday roast today?
Well, either save up your money, because the average roast with meat, veg, gravy and a chicken, £13.52. And I thought, that's still not that bad, because a roast chicken with all the trimmings... Well, how many people can you feed a chicken?
Well,
like 4 or 5
chicken,
people?
Doesn't it?
Well, it depends how much you want to eat as well. And if you're filling up with, you put roast potatoes, your carrots and whatnot, you've got the oven on, you can do an apple crumble at the same time, that's nice and cheap. So you kind of, economise. But it is definitely more than it used to be, up by about 20%. And, of course, there's been all that... and that's not including the energy costs of putting your oven on. That's just for the food. So a food increase, price increase of 20%, close to 20%, is massive. And obviously, if you're counting every penny, that is the difference between making it affordable or not affordable. But the other thing to remember, of course, is that the value ranges in supermarkets have gone up much more quickly and much more rapidly than the other ranges in supermarkets. So if you are counting your pennies and you're going for those value ranges, the prices have increased even more, and it's going to hit you even harder.
I tell you what, though, there's still some good money to be saved on things like potatoes. We get through a lot of potatoes. But you get the price differential between the lowest and the highest is enormous.
And it's just potatoes, isn't it?
It's potatoes.
No, there are some better potatoes than others.
Well, yeah, but if there's a
really
I don't think so.
If there's a black bit on it, cut it out.
Cut it out, yes.
No, it's the quality of the potato itself. You can get some that are just very plasticky and, not and others that fluff up nicely.
Oh, I like a waxy potato, though.
A waxy potato, that's
I love it. But that's a different... Yeah, so if you want to get technical, then kind of look at the breed of potato.
King Edwards.
Oh, don't like... Yeah, too fluffy for me.
Lovely and fluffy.
Just go for the cheap ones. Save some.
But that's the other thing.
But that's the point, yes, you're right.
The
things like squash, sweet potatoes, rice, those things
all
that...
of those extra
like
bulky
whole
things.
grains, keep the skins on as well, because that's where loads of the nutrition is, that's where all the fibre is. Makes it easier because you chop it up and lob it in. You don't
it's
need
all
to
those
do all
things that are very, very filling. I mean, to those of us who've given up meat anyway, I don't eat the chicken. I'm not interested in the chicken or the what everybody sees as the main part of the meal.
Yeah.
It's all the other things, but particularly the roast potatoes.
Oh,
do you know what we did? Actually, yesterday, we were doing chicken and we had friends coming over, but we only had one chicken. And we were like, well, how do we make it stretch? And we got a couple of tins of chickpeas.
Give them a lick each.
Yeah.
What?
A lick?
You don't get people to lick the chicken. I'll go. Next. Chickpeas, go on. What are you saying?
Well, cook that in with the chicken, and then they get like lots of the lovely flavour in the sauce, and then suddenly you had like a casserole dish, shoved it all in the oven, off we go, play with the kids for an hour and a half.
That was the only thing I was going to say, that to get proper roast potatoes, you need a very, very hot oven, don't you? So they are quite expensive to cook.
Energy intensive.
They are energy intensive.
I can't imagine you making a roast, Tom.
I'm not a particularly dab hand in the kitchen, I must admit.
No.
But you bet you enjoy a roast, though, don't you?
Very
There's
much.
nothing like on a Sunday. Oh,
But
absolutely
you can
brilliant.
never beat your mother's roast. That's the reality of it.
That's not what my...
Oh, no.
Oh, isn't it?
No.
Oh, you see,
It's because I don't eat it particularly. I don't really cook it, but they do. They all do a very good roast.
When I go home, my mother always does us a roast dinner, and it's just...
It's fantastic.
She does the best potatoes.
Aww.
It's true. It's absolutely true.
Roast potatoes.
Oh, yeah. I'll tell you
yeah.
what she does, actually. Here's a nice tip for you. Of course, it costs more money, in effect. But you parboil them, score them with a fork, and then rub them in flour.
Yeah.
And then
Rub them in flour?
Yeah, put flour on them, and then they come out so crispy.
Can I add another bit?
Go on.
Which is put the tray in with a little bit of oil, heat up the tray while you're parboiling potatoes and then letting them dry off and doing whatever you're doing with flour. Then put them in the hot oil, beware the splashing, and that, like, poof.
Yeah.
Because the oil gets really hot. So you get that crunchy outside. Yeah, it's good. There you go, Tom.
Tell us what you're planning today for lunch. Please do. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yes, we've got lots more to come for you in just a couple of minutes, including getting ready to learn how to carve that perfect pumpkin. But looking ahead to the weather, in the UK is going to be showery in the west this morning, brighter elsewhere, rain in the far southeast. Here are the details.
By midday, the southwest of England will see a mix of sunshine and scattered showers. The showers locally perhaps heavy and being blown through on a brisk southwesterly wind.
Thicker cloud likely across southeastern parts of England. Here the showers will be merging, so that's going to give some longer spells of rain.
Some heavy and quite blustery showers will affect Wales, although in the brighter spells, temperatures could read a mild 16 Celsius.
Now, most parts of the Midlands should just about escape any showers. There'll be some bright or sunny spells developing at times. Going to be quite mild for late October, although there will be a bit of a breeze.
A generally fine weather will extend to the northeast of England as well, with showers confined to the Pennine areas. In shelter from the wind, it shouldn't feel too bad, thanks to some sunshine.
Let's head to Scotland, where the sun will be more reluctant to break through across southern parts, though quite a few showers are likely, some of which will be on the heavy side.
And a good scattering of showers will affect Northern Ireland as well, although most of these should be light and they should feed through quite quickly in the wind.
So during the afternoon and evening, showers gradually easing, some good cloud breaks developing, though it will be breezy. And that's your weather this Sunday.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun every Friday, Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Every Saturday at 2 o'clock, join me, Darren Grimes, for Real Britain. I'm not afraid to give you a platform and say it how it is.
Come on, make the case. Something like this is very, very important to people.
And we're always up for a laugh on this show.
God, honestly, you'd think there were no problems in the world.
Real Britain, every Saturday on GB News.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flop at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you
to each and every one of you
for helping our great nation
find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV,
on radio
and online.
We're proud to be
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister is warned that spending cuts could take us back to the austerity of 12 years ago.
Good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock. It's Sunday, the 30th of October, and this is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live, as usual, across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. Wherever you are, you can take us with you. Here are your top stories this morning.
Well, ahead of the autumn budget next month, the Prime Minister and Chancellor have been told that plans to cut spending to fill that £50 billion black hole could take us back to the times of austerity.
And what next for Northern Ireland? Another Assembly election looms. A date hasn't yet been decided. We'll bring you all the latest updates, but it's going to be expensive, and will it work?
And, of course, it's almost Halloween, so have you got your costume ready, snacks prepared, pumpkins carved? And if you want any inspiration, here's one I made earlier. It's what I did yesterday evening. And if that doesn't get you in the carving mood, I am proud of that. We've got an expert on hand, this fella here, to show us how to do it properly. Look at that, it's William and Kate on their wedding day.
That is true carving.
It's beautiful, but it ain't very scary.
It ain't very Halloween-y.
No. Anyway, send your creations through if you'd like to. gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Well, it may be a Sunday. We may be looking forward to Halloween and parties, but all over the Sunday newspapers today, it's politics in all sorts of forms. The Prime Minister, of course, preparing his autumn budget. A think tank has warned that a freeze on public spending would see some services return to levels seen in the 2010s, an era of austerity.
All this as the Prime Minister and the Chancellor are considering £50 billion of spending cuts and tax hikes to try to fix the economy, of course, and we're expecting that autumn statement on November the 17th.
And in the meantime, there are exclusives on the Mail on Sunday's front page, for instance, about Liz Truss's private phone being hacked. Earlier on in the summer, it was only discovered, apparently, during the leadership campaign and has been kept very quiet until now, and it's been leaked out. But apparently her private mobile phone was hacked by Russian spies.
Can you imagine? Wouldn't like anyone to go through mine. Anyway, let's talk to our political reporter, Olivia Utley, who's here. Morning, Olivia. I mean, it is a right old mishmash of stuff on the papers this morning. But the common theme it all has, I guess, is that we're in for a bit of a rough ride over the next month.
I think we can safely say we're in for a rough ride, yes. I think, to me, the biggest story is this story that's been rumbling along for a while now about the Prime Minister and the Chancellor trying to fill a £50 billion black hole in public finances. I think we should take that figure with a little bit of a pinch of salt, because we can tell already that the Chancellor is very much in expectation management mode at the moment. He wants the budget not to seem quite as bad as it's been billed when it finally comes around. But also, to mitigate it slightly, we know that the price of gas is falling a bit. The markets have been calmed by Rishi Sunak becoming Prime Minister. So that hole isn't quite as big as it was. But it's very big nonetheless. And it's very hard to see what the Prime Minister and the Chancellor can do, which is politically palatable to fill that hole. Of course, Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor, wanted to raise national insurance. That's been scrapped, and it doesn't look like he's going to reinstate it. Or if he is, he couldn't even do it for another 6 months. That would be a quick, easy way to raise a lot of money. Another quick, easy way to raise a lot of money would be to scrap the triple lock on pensions. We know that's very, very difficult for Conservative Party, which is already doing badly in the polls. That leaves the only options left, really, to be wide cuts to big spending departments like education, defence, health. But we know that's very difficult to get through Parliament. And it looks like Labour are going to force through votes on every single spending cut that's mentioned in this fiscal statement. So you're going to have very angry Tory MPs who are accountable to their constituents not wanting local school funding per pupil to be cut, watching their MPs vote for that. So it's going to be a really difficult time ahead.
What about windfall tax, though? Because we know we're going to have another windfall tax on the energy companies. Isn't that going to bring in billions of pounds?
That will bring in money, and the good news from that is that the Chancellor and the Prime Minister were worried. Lots of Conservative, sort of Thatcherite, growth-focused Conservatives were worried that the windfall tax would stop these big energy companies investing in Britain. They'd just go and move their work elsewhere and not pay tax in Britain at all. It turns out that that doesn't seem to be happening too much, so it will bring in some money. But a windfall tax, by its very nature, is temporary. And there's, I think it was the Telegraph this morning, there was a report that it might be extended into up to 30% and into 2028, but can't do much more than that. And of course, the longer you do it and the deeper it is, the more likely it is that energy companies will just think, well, we don't need to be operating too much in Britain. We don't need to be investing in drilling in Britain, for example. So there isn't that much wiggle room there.
Yeah, 2028 is quite a long time, though. I mean, that would bring in a fair amount of money, wouldn't it?
It would bring in a fair amount of money, yes, as long as you don't have companies deciding just not to operate in Britain or not to operate in Britain as much as before. And yes, it would bring in money, but it's in the single figures of billions, so it's not. It doesn't plug that hole. The way that Labour sort of presents it, because obviously Labour would like to. Their answer to everything is basically a windfall tax, larger and larger windfall tax on oil and gas companies, which does make sense in some ways, but it's not quite as lucrative as you might think.
Right. I mean, is a £50 million black hole fillable anyway? I mean, there's not going to be a fix to it, is there?
Well,
it's going to be something we're going to have to live with for decades.
Yes, and I think that particularly, well, from what I gather, Jeremy Hunt is very interested in sort of abacus economics, and he is really concentrated on making sure that those numbers add up exactly and filling that £50 billion hole as fully as possible. Rishi Sunak is a little bit more relaxed. He's a proper fiscal conservative, but he's not so concerned about making those numbers add up absolutely. And what he wants to do is sort of reassure the markets, politics by vibe, as they call it, make it clear that he is keen on and focused on cutting that deficit, but not necessarily doing it all in one go, not necessarily filling in that hole with, you know, huge measures which would be very, very unpopular.
But this is where it gets complicated, isn't it? Because it's bleating on about this myself back in, 12 years ago. It's the difference, isn't it, between debt. We know our national debt isn't as bad as a lot of European countries, but it's the difference between debt and deficit, which is because deficit obviously has to be addressed in the long term.
Well, hang on, what's the difference between debt and deficit?
Deficit is the difference between what you take in to what is going out, whereas debt is just money that you've already spent that you owe. So it's the ongoing finances, isn't it?
Yeah, and debt is really worrying because we're paying huge interest rates on our debt all the time, and the cost of the interest is, I mean, more than the size of pensions that we're paying.
But do any countries in the world operate in the black?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I doubt it somehow.
I
you
doubt
never hear of it, do you? But any countries that are actually getting everything right and got all their sums right and floating on the top?
No, I'd expect sort of Scandinavian countries because they seem to
maybe
do
the nearest.
Right,
and they have very, very high tax rates.
They do have very high tax rates and very low immigration, and that's whereas and a healthcare system which is funded through taxation, but
which is seen to be very, very good.
Seems to be very good, yes, but it's a very, very different model to the model that we operate here.
And that's the problem, is it? If we look at, you look at the potential solutions to all of this, and you can tweak the edges. They can all tweak the edges, but what they can't do is bring in a fundamentally different system. Because as you see, when we sort of say, we want to tweak the NHS, it causes uproar.
Yes, and I think that's another problem for Rishi Sunak. He's inheriting this bizarre and pretty grim political situation most of the way through a political term. So he's got, just over a year left in office. So there isn't very much incentive for him to do sort of deep-rooted reforms, something like serious structural reform of the NHS, which is actually quite popular on the Conservative backbenches, could make a huge difference to the country's finances. But it's not going to pay off before the 2024, 2025 general election.
All it would garner is negative headlines between then and now anyway.
Exactly.
The Tories are tinkering with the NHS, they're trying to privatise it.
Exactly. And there's also, a pretty good case for scrapping the triple lock, which is getting insanely expensive, and obviously you've got quite annoyed working people feeling as though, well, my wage isn't going up in line with inflation or 2.5%, so why should pensions? You can see the argument for that, and it would raise a lot of money, but again, all it's going to do is garner negative headlines and obliterate the Conservative vote in those southern Tory seats, which the Tories desperately need to keep hold of.
I was going to say, it's a key part of their base, isn't it, the older population?
It is.
You must meet a lot of politicians, and I mean, we have this problem all the time in that people say, oh, they're just in it for themselves, they've got their snouts in the trough. And we've all come across politicians who are in it really, sincerely to try and change the world and better it. But it's almost as though you can't. Everything's weighted against you by the very nature of our system.
Yes, and also by the very nature of the situation that we find ourselves in now. I think because of the chaos of the mini-budget and those 6 weeks of the Liz Truss premiership, we've sort of forgotten that actually the situation that she inherited was pretty terrible. She played a bad hand badly, you could say, but it was definitely a bad hand. And there are reports in the papers this morning of food prices rising even higher because of the situation in Ukraine, gas prices rising higher. You've got so many different global phenomena playing out at the same time that it's very difficult to see how a sort of Conservative government can sort of make the country fundamentally better in the sort of 2.5 years left. And as you say, that's what lots of politicians want to do on both sides of the House. But yes, it's a very difficult global situation that we're in, which I think has been obscured. It's quite easy to blame Westminster for what we've seen over the last year or so, but a lot of the problems were already baked in, if made worse, by the goings-on in Westminster.
OK, Olivia, thank you very much indeed.
It's depressing, but it never gets dull. Does it? It is depressing at times, but it doesn't get dull.
I think the problem is, especially when things get desperate, and things are very, very desperate for an awful lot of people, that people just said there's got to be, and this is what the opposition parties always do, of course, is to say, well, there is an answer, you need to do this, and there's never an answer.
No, there's
never that straightforward.
Not to this. It's too big.
So,
and we have met many politicians who do go in for the most sincere reasons.
Oh, yeah.
But they find themselves, I think, stymied time and again. It's like, I mean, the National Health Service says it all, doesn't it? There are so many people who agree that it needs, what do they call it, root and branch change. But nobody can do it because the minute you tinker with it or you even announce that you want to do something like that, you're accused of trying to privatise it or tinkering with it.
And everyone talks about how wonderful nurses are.
Yeah,
which they are, but maybe a tinkering of a complete change in the system would make working life better for them. Perhaps they get paid more and
we all know that there is money being absolutely scooped into the National Health Service, but being wasted within it. Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I was looking it up yesterday. Actually, I think it was £139 billion it cost last year.
All those silly things like the fact that there are contracts to buy medicines and drugs at their most expensive when there are generic medicines and drugs that you and I can buy over the counter much cheaper. The National Health Service is buying at its top price because of certain contracts with certain manufacturers.
I was once given a prescription for paracetamol.
That's crazy.
Which, now I don't have to pay for my prescriptions, but nevertheless, the government would be then paying whatever it was at the time, £7 odd, for a packet of paracetamol that cost 49p. So, I mean, the pharmacist said, oh, no, these are just ordinary paracetamol.
Can you imagine the paperwork that it takes to have a prescription for you to get that paracetamol on the NHS? The paperwork that must cost more as well, just to do that, when you could easily just go to the pharmacist and buy a packet.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
And those are the things, those are where the NHS is wasting money. Nobody's fault, maybe, but it's just sort of baked in, as Olivia was saying. And that's why it needs reform.
It's not joined-up thinking.
Yeah.
That's the issue, isn't it? But anyway, it's not like we can solve it.
No, but it perplexes you sometimes, doesn't it?
It does. Look, at 9:13, let's bring you up to date with some of the other headlines today. And South Korea's president has declared a period of national mourning following a deadly stampede last night. 151 people were killed, 82 injured in Seoul. Rishi Sunak has tweeted saying, all our thoughts are with South Koreans at this distressing time.
And Russia has suspended a UN-brokered Black Sea grain deal with Ukraine after an alleged Ukrainian drone attack on its fleet in Crimea. The US President Joe Biden called the move purely outrageous and said it would just increase starvation. The United Nations has, though, apparently resumed contacts with Russian authorities.
The government's been urged to launch an investigation following reports that Liz Truss's phone was hacked earlier this year. The Mail on Sunday revealed the PM's phone was hacked by Russian agents before she was Prime Minister, it has to be said. It was apparently discovered during the Tory leadership campaign, when at the time Liz Truss was Foreign Secretary.
And the Princess of Wales has urged those suffering with an addiction not to let shame hold them back from getting help. Princess Catherine made the comments via video on the first day of Addiction Awareness Week. She herself is patron of the addiction recovery charity, the Forward Trust.
Addiction is a very strange thing, isn't it? I think I have an addictive personality.
Yes, and I think there's no doubt there is such a thing as an
addictive personality. Yeah. It's why I don't drink anymore, because I just knew, because I
can't stop.
I can't stop. Once I open a bottle of wine, you keep going until the wine is gone. Or whatever it is.
And there's no reason to.
No.
I'm like that with sandwiches or something like that.
Yeah. Well,
why can't I eat half a sandwich? I can't.
No.
If it's still there on the plate, there is a compulsion to finish it.
Yeah.
Which is stupid, really. Does it come from those wartime warnings when your parents used to say to you, "You've got to finish it. Remember the children in."
Oh well.
Where was it they used to say?
But I remember when I gave up drinking, and when I was 31, 17 years ago now, I remember Mum saying, "Well, can't you just have a glass of wine?" It's like, no, can't do it. You drive me mad. Brain goes into overtime.
That is an addictive personality. Yeah. But it's funny, in that video that Princess Catherine has recorded, she makes the point that addiction is a health concern. It's a health condition. It's not a choice. She said nobody chooses to be an addict. They might choose to take whatever it is they then become addicted to, but nobody would choose to be an addict. It's not a choice, she says, it's a health condition. And you have to remember that first. And what then do you do about health conditions? You go to get help for a health condition, don't you? I think that's what she was trying to say.
Yeah, but you've seen, some people...
Don't refuse help.
Some people think you're weak if you become addicted to something, but you've just got to get the help if you need it. Yeah. I think that's the way forward.
I think it's being grown up. If you broke your leg, you'd go and get help, wouldn't you?
Exactly. Now, on to serious matters, because the government's anti-terrorist strategy is going to be reviewed following the Foreign Secretary's address to the UN Security Council Counter-Terrorism Committee.
Yeah, James Cleverly maintained the need for a coherent battle plan to combat the spread of terrorism, and he also urged Britain's allies to investigate the threat of foreign insurgent groups against their own people.
All sounds very complicated, doesn't it? Hopefully, putting a bit of sense to it all is former head of counter-terrorism at the Ministry of Defence, Major General Chip Chapman. Morning to you, Chip. It's good to see you. What do you make of all of this, then? Because it sounds, on the surface, extremely complicated. What does it all mean?
Well, Britain's had a contest strategy, a counter-terror strategy since 2003. It's been refreshed a number of times, 06, 11, 18. So we're in a pretty good place, but where terrorism emanates from is really from fragile and failing states. That's why you see IS still stalking around the Middle East, in Iraq and Syria. But in the UK space, we're in a pretty good place. And you can get sort of seduced by the dread, hazard and threat inflation of terrorism. So, for example, last year there was only one lethal attack, and that was the one on Sir David Amos in October 21, sort of followed by the self-immolation of a potential terrorist at Liverpool. So only 2 attacks last year. Similarly, in 2020, there were only 3 and 2 in 2019. So the threat level in the UK has reduced. In 2017, the Intelligence and Security Committee said it would be at severe. That's the second level. For at least 5 years, it went down to substantial in February 21, came up for a wee period in late November last year because of other factors, but we're in a pretty good place. You shouldn't be complacent, and that's why it's worth always looking at revision, those things which are driving things, for example, online radicalisation, and most of the attacks we've had and Counter-Terrorist Command are using March 17 as the baseline. The 14 attacks that have taken place since then, 12 have been what they now call self-initiated terrorists, what we used to call lone actors.
Yeah, the line is very bad. We'll persevere for just a bit longer if we can. Can I just ask how counter-terrorism operates then? Because it seems that from what we hear, it seems to me to be about monitoring all the chatter online. Is that it, basically?
No, it's wider than that. So essentially, you've got a triumvirate between Counter-Terrorist Command with embedded MI5 officers and GCHQ sort of going across the net alongside MI5, and you're looking for those tactical markers or tactical tip-offs. Some of those can obviously come from people giving tips to MI5, and there were a number of those which came, for example, during the Queen's funeral with some of the deaths there. So it's looking at online radicalisation via the electronic ether. It's looking at digital forensic analysis of those things. There's some of the tip-offs, which you then can lead to warrantry, for example, which is doing intrusive surveillance on phones and computers and things like that.
OK. Major General Chip Chapman, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed. Sorry about that. There was a slightly dodgy connection there, but not to worry. We got the gist of what Chip was saying. How we go from that to something completely, sort of like from the sublime to the ridiculous.
Hot water bottles?
Well, I was going to say Kerry and Dorset first, biscuits.
Oh, yes, biscuits.
Because Kerry and Dorset
Apparently
says,
there's going to be a biscuit shortage. Can't remember why now.
Foxes, some of the engineers are threatening to go on strike. So
Pre-Christmas.
But anyway, hopefully they'll get that sorted out. Kerry in Dorset says, your liking for pink wafer biscuits made me smile. The only other person I knew that liked them was my late mother. This is where it gets crazy. But I follow a lot of super Japanese hamsters on Instagram, and they love them too. I did find out that it's not cochineal in them nowadays. It's beetroot.
Ah, that's better.
It makes them pink.
Yeah, there had to be a veggie version, didn't there? But we are onto hot water bottles now, because apparently they're selling out. I mean, as we get any little mini crisis, we sell out of loo paper, didn't we, pre-pandemic?
Pasta, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. Well, now it's hot water bottles. Janet says, I've still got a stone one that my mother used to put in my bed in the 1950s. In the days when ice was on the inside of the windows. Those were the days. Those stone ones are lovely, apparently. They keep the warmth for a very long time.
Yeah, we've got a stone one at home somewhere. I don't know if you can still buy them.
Oh, you can. Sorry, I've just... Oh, no, it's a used one on Etsy.
Yeah.
You can. We'll find a way to get them.
Yeah, no, we've got one of those up north, and also a bedpan. Not that we ever used the bedpan.
No, you don't mean a bedpan, you mean a warming pan.
A warming pan. Oh, yes, bedpan.
A bedpan was underneath the bed.
Oh, that's when you want to put the coals out, isn't it? Yeah, no, warming pan.
Yeah, warming pan. Well, you used to fill them in the olden days. That's what they used to take the coals from the fire that you would have just been, it would have been an open fire. You put the coals in the warming pan, then take it up, and then you go up and
do it over the bed.
Do it over the bed, and apparently it was brilliant.
Yeah,
didn't last very long. I mean, it meant you got into warm sheets, but the rest was up to you.
Pauline in Chesterfield, morning. Pauline says, I never use a hot water bottle nowadays. I use a microwavable Wheatie pack. 1 minute 30 in the microwave, and it's brilliant.
I always worry about those. I'm worried they're going to sort of catch fire in the microwave, Jeanette says, our family call hot water bottles Walters, after a story in a comic from the 60s. I thought my mum called them Walter after the singing window cleaner. Huh? The truth is often less interesting.
You had a singing window cleaner called Walter?
Yeah. Or was there a famous singing window cleaner called Walter? I don't know.
Gay says, forget hot water bottles, I use a pet heat pad. It's pink, it's a pink plastic disc, goes in the microwave for 7 minutes, so a long time, but then stays warm for 9 to 10 hours.
Wow.
It's got a fleece cover and costs about 13 quid.
That's good.
That's pretty good.
Audrey in Ferndown says, I've been using one for years, as my hubby doesn't feel the cold, but I do. I make a cup of tea early evening, and the rest of the water goes into the hob. Brilliant. Hob? You mean...
Hot water bottle.
Hot water bottle, yeah. Brilliant on my tummy, because then I sit watching TV.
Yeah,
they are nice to watch TV with. Yeah.
Something very comforting about them. I think it's the way forward.
That pet heat pad thing is interesting. That's just reminded me.
Oh, yes.
I bought one of those pet cooling pads for the summer.
So did I.
And it's still there on the dog's chair.
Oh.
So when she goes on it, it's still cooling her rather than heating her at the moment.
Yeah.
Mind you, she is covered in fluff. So maybe I'll have to get it out.
Yes, I bought.
It was there.
I bought one of those for Timmy, and he wouldn't get on it.
Well, I hid mine underneath in the cushion underneath.
Oh, you're sneaky.
Yeah, so when she got on it during the summer. Do you remember those days when it was really, really hot?
I know. It's not that long ago,
No,
really.
it's not that long ago.
Roasting.
It's not
And
there.
now
The opposite.
I did buy another fleece duvet cover, because not fleece, what am I talking about? Brushed cotton.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
they're lovely and cosy.
Do you remember brushed cotton pyjamas?
Oh, yes.
Oh, brushed cotton pyjamas keep you toasty warm. Maybe it's time for those as well now.
Maybe,
It's
but
those old-fashioned things,
I
isn't
bet
it?
they're expensive.
They will be, because they would be seen as a luxury item nowadays, wouldn't they?
They call it loungewear these days, don't
Yes,
they?
they do. Lovely.
Anyway, don't go anywhere. We've got much more to come for you, including how to design the perfect pumpkin.
For
If you're planning a bit of carving, yes, for Halloween.
We are GB News.
And we'd like to say thank you.
To each and every one of you.
For helping our great nation.
Find its voice.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Across England, Scotland,
Wales and Northern Ireland.
On TV.
On radio.
And online.
We're proud to be
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch.
You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me! And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
On the Mark Steyn Show, we cover the stories a lot of people are scared even to mention. The stuff that really matters with some of the world's biggest thinkers.
Now is his opportunity to kind of take the steering wheel of history.
Break away from the flock at 8 o'clock on GB News with the Mark Steyn Show.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Hello, I'm Alastair Stewart, and I'd invite you to join me at noon on Saturdays and Sundays for Alastair Stewart and Friends. I've been in this business for over 40 years. Now, here at GB News, I've never been happier. I get to choose the big stories that really interest me. We hear what you have to say, and you hear what I have to say. I really hope you can join me, noon on Saturdays and Sundays.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by two of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
It is 9:28. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
More of your pumpkin pictures. Thank you so much for sending them in. Of course, it's Halloween tomorrow and you've been carving away. Julie says, look inside this pumpkin to reveal an owl on a tree, carved by Ferdy or Freddie, I think my grandson, aged 5. He's very proud of it.
Owl on a tree. Wow.
There's something inside the pumpkin there. That's
very
a clever
fancy,
idea,
isn't it?
Very nice.
Emily in Colchester says, here is my nightmare before Christmas effort. Love, love, love Halloween.
Very good.
Very good. I'm very impressed with that.
Yeah, that
Very
almost
nice.
rivals yours, I think.
I think so. Sharon says, I turned my pumpkin into a flower vase for Dad.
Oh, that's a good idea.
It's a different thing.
That's beautiful,
That's
actually.
very nice,
Well done. And Dee says, my daughter and I carved a pineapple. A messy experience, but great fun.
That's very impressive, actually.
Yeah, so you can do it with any of those sort of fruits. That's really unusual.
Yeah, it looks really good. Finally, Fran says, this is my pumpkin, my grandson Jacob, nearly 9 months old.
And isn't he gorgeous?
I love that dressing up as a pumpkin. Gorgeous. In a wheelbarrow, that's clearly in a pumpkin
yes,
patch somewhere.
it is, isn't it? And he's dressed up for the event. And it's not even Halloween yet. But it's time to get your pumpkin carving going. And in a few minutes' time, that's what we're going to be doing. We've got an expert pumpkin carver coming in to hopefully give us a few hints and tips on how to do the job properly.
Well, they'll have specialist tools or not, I don't know.
I think, well, we'll find out, won't we?
Find out.
Only a few minutes' time, so do stick with us.
Now, let's head to Northern Ireland, should we? The Northern Ireland Secretary is going to have to call an election to be held within 12 weeks after politicians missed the deadline to restore devolved government.
In a statement, Chris Heaton-Harris says he is extremely disappointed that the executive has not reformed without this.
Now, the most likely date for the election is the 15th of December, although a date for a poll doesn't have to be set, actually, immediately.
Our reporter Doogie Beattie is live for us now from Stormont. Hello there, Doogie. We were talking earlier about, a lot of people will think what a waste of time and money this is because it doesn't appear to be going to go anywhere, does it?
No, it definitely doesn't, and it just is going to come back, as well. Sinn Féin will turn it into a border poll. The unionists will object to that, both parties, and it will go to the extremes, basically. And you've got to remember that the type of government that's set up here under the Good Friday Agreement, it doesn't matter who comes back as the largest party and second largest party, because the First Minister and Deputy First Minister are exactly the same office, and one cannot function without the other. In 2017, Sinn Féin stayed out of here for 1,044 days, 3 years. And of course, that could be argued that stopped the national health being ready for the pandemic that came about just weeks after this government was reformed here. So what really lies in store for the people of Northern Ireland? What is devolved institutions worth to them, any of them? Most economists will tell you that devolved governments don't actually do anything more economically than a direct rule government, but it does allow locals to spend money with local representation, actually to pinpoint the very places where that money should be spent. The big ticket items such as health, education and security will go back to Chris Heaton-Harris, the Secretary of State, and we could look at local councils here actually starting to spend that money, just bypassing this place beside us, because Stormont does not have any fiscal powers. It cannot raise taxes except in the rates, and councils can do that anyhow. So we have about £18 billion, 9.6 billion block grant and about 8.4 in Barnock consequentials to spend amongst 1.8, 1.9 million people. The infrastructure here is very small as well, because, as I've said, there's only about 1.8, 1.9 million people here. So even our cities here aren't in and around what you would be classed as a city. Belfast would be classed in England as a big town. So things like gas, etc., home heating oil, all those voucher schemes that would have to be placed would be usually placed through an administration here in Northern Ireland. That is now not going to happen. But we do wonder about what will fill the void here if these administrations or these institutions are not put back. And Chris Heaton-Harris was almost accused here of trying to bounce the DUP into government after not forming a government for 24 weeks. Don't forget, they actually stood on the ticket to get elected here of anti-protocol, and they were returned as the largest unionist party, so they have a mandate that they will stand by. And until that protocol is fixed or looked at by the EU, well then there is no sense in having elections, £6 million worth of elections. And don't forget, all those schools, etc., have to close on the 15th of December. People have to be employed for the counting of that. That is all just turning to a mess here in Northern Ireland.
Oh, it sounds like Doogie for now. Thank you. Don't go anywhere. We've got plenty more to come, including Robert Harbin's going to take us through all the latest royal news.
Weekday afternoons on GB News, we've got the whole of the UK covered. From 12 to 3, it's GB News Day with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Gloria Di Piero. You'll get the very latest on everything that's been going on across our great nation.
And from 3 till 6, watch out for GB News Live with me, Patrick Christys. I'm not here to mess around. With all the biggest topics and guests, you will always be up to date. GB News Day and GB News Live from 12 p.m.
Only on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
My name's Tom Harwood, and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today. I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked. Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
On Mark Dolan tonight, we have a simple plan, which is to inform, stimulate and entertain in equal measure. It's all about getting your opinions on the national television airwaves. I love my viewer emails, mark@gbnews.uk. So do join me from 9 p.m. to midnight every Friday, Saturday and Sunday for big guests, big opinions and a big presenter. 6'5", don't you know? See you then on GB News.
Where would you like to go?
Just take me to the studio, please, Matt. You know where you're going. I've got a show to do. Friday Night Feast on GB News, 7 p.m. And it's like nothing you've ever seen before. We take a different angle on the week's biggest news stories. The viewers and listeners set me some absolutely mad challenges to do. We tried to rehome a rescue dog. And yes, there's some other wacky stuff in there as well. I feel like I could take on the world. Well, that's that. Friday Night Feast with me, Patrick Christys, every Friday, 7 till 9 p.m. on GB News. Be there.
Join me, Arlene Foster, for The Briefing on GB News. Every Friday at 3 p.m, I'll give you all the latest political news and analysis, and we'll have robust live debate. To make sure that you're caught up on all of the biggest issues of the day, we'll bring on experts in their field. I'll ask the questions that you'd like to ask. We're not afraid to tackle discussions from all perspectives, including yours. Don't forget, The Briefing with me, Arlene Foster, every Friday at 3 p.m. on GB News.
9:38. Good morning to you, watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
Now, we were saying earlier that politics is all over the Sunday newspapers today. The other thing is royals, particularly Prince Harry. They're still talking about his book. It's not out till January the 10th, but will he come to the UK to promote it?
Yeah, the controversial memoir, as Anne said, coming out in January. There are claims this morning that the Prince may return in the new year to express his intent behind writing it.
Which is an interesting phrase to use, isn't it? So he'll explain his intent. Maybe he won't give away what's in it.
I don't know. Let's talk to raw biographer Robert Harbin, who's here in the studio. Morning to you. I mean, this would be a car crash of a PR exercise, wouldn't it?
I think normally if you're bringing a book out, I've written one or two, I mean, your publishers want you to be out there letting the world know that this book exists, that you've written it and that it's jolly good. In this instance, I think the whole world already knows about this book. So frankly, I would be surprised if Harry decided to cross the Atlantic to promote it because A, we all know about it, B, he could give interviews in California. But also, I think the messaging would be extraordinary. You know, less than a year before, there he was saying he couldn't come to Britain because it was too dangerous, so he couldn't attend the memorial service, for example, of the Duke of Edinburgh. So I think it would look... I don't expect to see him coming over to launch it. I really don't.
It's interesting as well what's happening behind the scenes because, I mean, it's going to cast a shadow over the Christmas celebrations in Balmoral, isn't it? Or wherever they do the Christmas celebrations. Because the royal family must be really worried about what he's going to say and whether they can ever reconcile with him after it.
Well, clearly, it's at the moment it's the great unknown in sort of palace circles. I mean, we keep being told that it's you know, truth bombs are out there and that it's going to be all doom and gloom for the monarchy. But you know, we're journalists. We know that he doesn't have to, as it were, trash the brand. He doesn't have to use another phrase, to throw members of the family under a bus to make this a colossal bestseller. I mean, if you think about it, Harry just reminiscing about the day that the Princess of Wales took him to McDonald's for the first time, or whatever it might be. You know, those are big things. Those are things people are interested in reading. So I don't know that he's going to really let rip against the family. I think he'll certainly be very, very forceful against the media, against some of the officials, against the establishment, that sort of thing. But my hunch is that he's wise enough to hold back on demolishing the institution.
Well, let's hope so. I mean, we're talking of the institution. There's been some sort of constitutional reform which is certainly underway, isn't it? Which should actually remove Harry and Andrew from playing any sort of major role.
Yes, I wrote about this last week. As things stand, we have a system of what are called councillors of state who stand in for the monarch when he or she goes abroad. And at the moment, the King, were he to go abroad, and he's head of the Commonwealth, he's going to start travelling early next year. He has to. He's got lots of places to go to. When that happens, you've got to have the machinery of government ready to go. And so you need the law currently stands that the 4 senior adults in line to the throne can stand in as councillors of state. Now, those are the Prince of Wales, Prince William, Prince Harry, Prince Andrew and Princess Beatrice. And the idea is to amend that law to allow others to be included on that list.
So that the King doesn't have to rely ever on Andrew or Harry.
Precisely. And that if you were to include, say, former councillors of state, because in the past you've had the Princess Royal, the Earl of Wessex had been councillors of state, that would then put those 2 in the mix. And you only ever need to have 2 at any one time. But you do need them. I mean, in 1974, there was a major crisis. Britain had coal strikes, the Queen was in Australia, and it was actually Princess Margaret and the Queen Mother who ended up having to sign off legislation to call a state of emergency and then to actually dissolve Parliament. So, I mean, you know, you never know what's going to happen. You have to be prepared. And so this is an effective way of effectively extending the number of people who could do that job so that you don't have to use Prince Andrew, Prince Harry, but without demoting them. I think no one wants to look spiteful and say, no, we're not having you anymore. It's just the pool of potential will be expanded.
OK. Robert, sadly, we have to leave it there. Been good to see you this morning. Thank you.
Now, have you been making the most of Halloween yet? Well, you have, actually, judging by all of the wonderful pumpkin pictures you've already sent us. Thanks very much.
Well, this year across Britain, thousands of people are heading to pumpkin patches, but with a record dry summer and cost of living crisis, we wanted to find out more. So we sent our West Midlands reporter Jack Carson to the fields of Staffordshire.
When you think of Halloween, you think of ghosts, trick-or-treating and, of course, pumpkins. And in 2022, Brits are expected to spend around £29 million on the fruit for Halloween. And around the country, pumpkin patches are cropping up all over the place. But just what makes them so popular? Well, I've come to Lower Drayton Farm in Staffordshire to find out more.
Owned by the Bauer family since 1982, this farm, like many others, is using pumpkins to create days out for families that also don't break the bank with the increases in the cost of living. And farmer Richard Bauer hopes he's built the right model in a time of higher prices.
We've basically seen
figures or visitor numbers this year are about the same as last year. We have seen growth over the last 5 years, but this year it stayed the same. So I think people are a bit more cautious about cost. With us offering the potatoes, the carrots and the sweet corn on top of the ticket, that has gone really, really well actually. And actually the potatoes have nearly all gone. So I think people are seeing the value in this raw produce as well. Within a business, we employ lots and lots of staff. And again, they're all worried themselves as well. And again, we've just got to help them as much as we can, but we've also got to be good value for our customers. But for the wider business, we've actually offered a membership for our customers as well. So rather than buy the ticket, they can pay so much a month and then they can come to the farm as many times as they want.
But building a patch like this isn't easy. This summer saw record levels of dry weather in the UK, but Richard insists tough times create new ideas.
Someone even joked with me that these pumpkins have seen 3 prime ministers as well since they've been planted. But no, it's been quite a challenging year. It's been a very hot summer, quite a drought as well. So farming is a gamble, I'll be totally honest. You plant something, you do all your best that you can do, and then basically you just hope and pray. And when you see a field like this at this time of year, you thank your lucky stars, essentially. But yeah, it has been a very, very dry year, which made a challenge, because when the plant was growing, then it creates flowers, and then those flowers are pollinated and create the pumpkin. Or what we saw in the extreme heat, some of those flowers were aborting, and then rather than the plant producing 2 pumpkins, it just produced 1 pumpkin. The field we're actually in here is an experiment, and we just planted this to see how it would go. This is a heavier soil type, which usually it doesn't really like, but actually because it's heavier, it held more moisture during the summer, and that's why these have yielded so well.
With 20 acres of pumpkins on offer, what do families make of the experience?
We've been coming for, the last 5 years since they were babies, so we've seen it just get bigger and bigger, and we just love it here. It's just a really nice atmosphere. There's loads for the kids to do, so we just keep coming back. It's brilliant.
Why do you think pumpkin patches are so popular?
I think it has a lot to do with American culture. That's probably brought past down, but it's just a great day out, isn't it? It's something different to do, carving them, just the whole atmosphere. It's just really good.
It's a day out, isn't it? Something to do rather than just go and pick one off the supermarket shelf.
And the variety, like the shapes, the sizes, they're all unique. They don't all look the same. And you get to go in the field.
Like in a supermarket, you'd only get like orange, but here you can get oval shaped, you can get green, you can get white, you can get loads.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands of people have visited this patch this month, and some are already lining up for next year's tickets too. Even with families being extra cautious with the cost of living, here in Staffordshire and across Britain, it doesn't look like we'll be waving goodbye to pumpkin patches anytime soon. Jack Carson, GB News.
Oh, sweet.
Brilliant. That's where you were yesterday. Well, not exactly.
Not that one, but
in
a pumpkin patch. It looks exactly like that one. Of course, it wouldn't be Halloween if we didn't do a little bit of pumpkin carving. It's a tradition that dates back, apparently, to 19th century Ireland.
They used to carve turnips, apparently.
Well, we always did turnips.
Did you carve them?
Yes, but we did turnip lanterns, back in the
day.
But
they must be much harder to
80s.
cut than pumpkins.
Well, I think my dad did them, really.
Yeah. Anyway, to put us all right, Aidan has joined us as well, because you fancy a go at pumpkin carving, don't you?
I do indeed. They have an international reputation, pumpkins. I mean, as I was explaining to you off...
Well, we've got expert pumpkin carver Dave Finkel is in the studio with us as well. Hello there.
Good morning.
And we saw an example earlier of one of your beautiful carvings, which wasn't actually a Halloween carving. It was one of the Prince and Princess of Wales, wasn't it?
Yeah, really challenging, though.
Well, I can't believe it. I don't know if we still got a picture of it, have we?
I love the fact that with these, you brought in as an example, but you've cut the bottoms off rather than the top. And is that where we're all going fundamentally wrong?
In one word, yes, it is. I always think carving the bottom out really makes it easy for everybody, because by carving the bottom, it actually stabilises the pumpkins.
Yes, it sits well on the table.
Yeah, they're less likely to roll around anywhere. But then I also find for people that are actually putting tea lights in them, if you were to cut a lid out the top, it cooks them and they start to just shrink, and that's when they collapse. And then they look really horrific.
There's some of your expert work.
Oh, wow,
That
look at
is
that.
Morris pumpkin, which is absolutely phenomenal, because you're using the different layers of the pumpkin skin and the flesh underneath to give those different light effects, aren't you?
Exactly that. To really get 3D images and to be able to push the boundaries on how creative you want to be, the thing with the pumpkin is the skin actually stops the tea light or the light shining through the flesh. If you peel away the surface of the skin, that actually lets about half of the light through.
Yes.
But then when you remove all of the flesh, it lets all of it through.
Yeah.
So, in simple terms, you get 3 shades of light, which becomes 3D.
Love it. I mean, I love that we're having a little... You've outlined some patterns for us here, but we've got these little saws. Now, I could have done with this last night rather than using a knife. These are great because it gives you a lot more direction.
Exactly. You've got a lot more control and it becomes more accessible for younger children as well.
So first of all, just to say, if we can look at your GB News one that is here, this is a lovely one that just shows how subtle you can be with the different layers. Can we see that? There we are. Lovely GB News one. But you would recommend outlining, first of all, the shape that you want to carve.
So I find the best technique really is that you get your designer template. There's thousands of them on the internet now that you can download. And also, now lots of the carving kits actually come with templates.
Oh, carving kits?
Yeah.
Oh, I've not come across that.
They've got carving kits on sale in my local shop.
I'm engrossed in this, I tell you.
It really is big business now, but some of the carving kits, they've become so sophisticated, but you get designed knives specifically for the job, and they're not too sharp. They're specifically for this purpose, so they're really safe.
Yeah, so you're not going to stab yourself too easily.
No, and it means as a family you can enjoy it together, and also the inner child comes out of the adult every single time.
It does. This is a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah, I think this is every dad's dream, isn't it?
Oh, it's not just dads.
I sort of think. I mean, there is something hugely satisfying about it, isn't
Yeah, there is. There is.
How do you look after the pumpkins themselves, though? Because I read yesterday, it said the pumpkin patch out saying wash them with vinegar.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, washing them with the vinegar can actually kill off any bacteria that's sitting on there, where sometimes the bacteria, if there's a puncture in the skin, it means that they start to rot from the inside. So you could be buying a perfectly good pumpkin, you take it home 2 days ago, and they've started to rot.
And they pong then, don't they? My goodness, they pong.
But one of my top tips is if you wanted to carve your pumpkin 2 or 3 days before Halloween, to keep the pumpkin hydrated...
In the fridge? Oh.
No, put them in a bucket of water and just let them bob around like giant apples.
Really?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that make them go rotten more quickly?
No, because they stay hydrated and they're submerged, and they're about 97% water.
Right.
And I've actually carved them up to 2 weeks before Halloween, and it's kept them in perfect condition.
Well, you see, that's very interesting, because it's that
Have I done that right, Dave?
Look at that.
Oh, lovely.
That's not bad work, is it?
Yeah. Thank you, cheers.
And that just shows that you can learn quite quickly.
But as I was about to say earlier...
Oh, here we go. Brace yourself.
Pumpkins in the early 1800s, they're actually used as currency in Haiti. And even today, the currency of Haiti, the official currency of Haiti, is the gourd.
Oh, I have heard that. My goodness.
Incredible.
How do you know these things?
Oh, goodness me. You know.
Yes, that would... Yes, yours...
I've broken a little bit of mine off, but there you go.
OK, and you just place those... and frankly, you don't have to use a live tea light or a live candle. You can use those little batteries.
Oh, it's upside down. I wondered why it didn't look right. It's because it was upside down.
You cut some corners there.
But the good thing with the tea lights, you can get them now where they're multicoloured and they flash different colours as well. So you end up with a disco inside your pumpkin.
But I just don't understand how you managed to get... You see, we've all been able to quite successfully do the basic outline, cutting out a shape. Yeah. But how you get the differences in the flesh tones...
Is it like a scraper sort of thing?
Yeah.
I actually use Thai carving knives for all of my intricate work that I do.
Right.
Do you?
They're flexible blades and it gives you a lot more control, and so you can get perfect sharp lines. I mean, with this one that I've done here, that's obviously the same that you guys are carving.
Yes.
I've actually etched through the skin first on that to make sure that I keep a real crisp, clean
Yes,
line.
we've got very rough lines on ours.
I was going to say, that looks quite a lot different to this.
But you can go and you can tidy it up afterwards, though, can't you?
Yeah, you can do.
Yes.
Yeah. And carving kits now, you can get them for as little as 99p, but the most expensive carving kit I've seen on the market is about £30.
Right.
And if you really are wanting to challenge yourself and do some really stunning creative work, it's well worth investing in that type of kit.
You see, that's what's nice about this, I think, because I'm not a creative person at all. However, it's a chance to sort of just have a go at something and just have a bit of fun with it.
Yeah.
Even if you don't do anything else the rest of the year.
I used to be terrible, and all that happened was by accident. I slid with the knife when I was trying to carve a graveyard scene, and I thought, uh-oh, I've ruined this one, this is going in the bin. I put a torch inside to see what would happen, and that was that light bulb moment.
Right.
Literally.
This was 12 years ago,
Wow.
and I'm like, wow, this could be really good. So that's then when I started to work on the technique, and I developed it to the point where I can do the 3D human portraits.
And do you do you do exhibitions and things like that?
Yes,
Is this your busy time of year?
Yes, it's very seasonal.
Well, yeah. What do you do the rest of the time?
I run visitor attractions. So I run a big arboretum in Essex, Marks Hall, as a charity.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So,
but they're packed with... I bet that's great at Halloween.
Yeah, it's been busy, put it that way.
Have you carved any other sort of good or fruit or something?
Yeah, watermelons, pineapples, I've done peppers, I've tried going through tomatoes, anything really you can have a go at. I've carved bagels in the years and all sorts of crazy things.
We had somebody who sent in a picture earlier of a... It looked either a very tall green pumpkin or a marrow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, there are all sorts of different varieties, aren't there?
There are. I mean, anything that you can hollow out and then just cut through, that's it. That becomes your lantern. And that's what pumpkins
these are.
They are about lanterns.
Yeah.
But people are taking it more extreme, and some people now, they sculpt from the outside just to turn them into a sculpture themselves. Stunning work.
Yeah. But they count as a fruit, is that correct?
Yes.
They're a fruit, and they're high in potassium, and that helps with your hearing as you advance in age, because it can have a positive effect on your blood pressure.
Someone's been Googling. Yeah. There you go. We are out of time. Dave, thank you so much for bringing this in. Really good to see you this morning. Aidan, thank you. I'm back tomorrow morning.
Yes, you are.
I am.
I'll watch you from bed.
Thank you very much indeed. See you then. Well, looking ahead to the weather, in the UK is going to be showery in the west this morning, brighter elsewhere, rain in the far southeast. Here are the details.
By midday, the southwest of England will see a mix of sunshine and scattered showers. The showers locally perhaps heavy and being blown through on a brisk southwesterly wind.
Thicker cloud likely across southeastern parts of England. Here, the showers will be merging, so that's going to give some longer spells of rain.
Some heavy and quite blustery showers will affect Wales, although in the brighter spells, temperatures could read a mild 16 Celsius.
Now, most parts of the Midlands should just about escape any showers. There'll be some bright or sunny spells developing at times. Going to be quite mild for late October, although there will be a bit of a breeze.
A generally fine weather will extend to the northeast of England as well, with showers confined to the Pennine areas. In shelter from the wind, it shouldn't feel too bad, thanks to some sunshine.
Let's head to Scotland, where the sun will be more reluctant to break through across southern parts, though quite a few showers are likely, some of which will be on the heavy side.
And a good scattering of showers will affect Northern Ireland as well, although most of these should be light and they should feed through quite quickly in the wind.
So during the afternoon and evening, showers gradually easing, some good cloud breaks developing, though it will be breezy. And that's your weather this Sunday.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m, where I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians as we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight. If it's a big story, we'll be covering it, I guarantee, but we'll also have some fun along the way. That's GB News Headliners at 11 p.m. We won't put you to sleep, unlike some of the other paper review shows out there. So join us, 11 p.m, 7 nights a week. I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Join me, Nana Akua, on Friday, Saturday and Sunday